Chapter 320. I can solve their problems. Contrary to everyone's reaction, Zhang Xian nodded his head. As expected of the number one genius of Tianwu Kingdom and a potential 2-star master teacher, he was able to grasp the essence of the matter instantly. Yes. Reverting to the aura of a genius, he gestured grandly. This female student possesses superior talent, but she has a cold disposition and she seems unwilling to interact with others. Since her talent is not bad, how can she still be at Jinchi Realm given her age? Clearly, she isn't serious about her training. Everyone was taken aback. That was indeed the case. Everyone had said that her talent was good, but reaching Jinchi Realm primary stage at 16 to 17-year-old, she barely even met the prerequisites to enter the academy. Theoretically, it didn't make sense at all. The only possibility was that she was talented, but she wasn't interested in training. Despite her reluctance to cultivate, she was confined to the academy. It couldn't be helped that she would grow an aversion towards studying as time goes by. To deduce this based on the mere difference between her aptitude and cultivation level. Your discernment ability is way too incredible. The face of the arrogant young man from before immediately turned ghastly white. As a teacher, he knew that such situations were common. Cultivation is an extremely boring process, and it isn't uncommon for one to detest it. Even in this world where strength reigned mighty, there were still a lot of people who were unwilling to cultivate. As a teacher, one would hope for all of his students to be outstanding. However, if a student is unwilling to cultivate, there's no way that a teacher could cultivate in his stead. Teaching is a two-way thing. It is one thing for a teacher to teach well, and it is another thing for a student to learn seriously. This female student's aversion towards studying was probably the problem that Principal Xia was talking about previously. All of the teachers here had been tackling the wrong problem from the very start. It was no wonder why the principal wasn't happy. What about him? Hearing Mo Hongyi's rational and clear analysis on the situation, Principal Xia stroked his beard and pointed to the male student. If I'm not wrong, he's probably a problematic youth who often gets engaged in battle, causing him to face the threat of expulsion. Mo Hongyi chuckled. Oh? Principal Xia looked at Mo Hongyi with interest. The reason for thinking so? Simple. I have examined the battle techniques he displayed just now, and even though it is modeled from the knowledge one learns in a classroom, his movements were aimed straight for the vitals. Clearly, he had undergone quite a few battles, refining his movements to be swift and precise. Mo Hongyi spoke casually. But of course, that isn't the main point. More importantly, when he executes the battle techniques, there is a savage gleam in his eyes and one could easily feel killing intent from him. Given his personality, it is normal for him to fall out with his classmates easily. This kind of problematic youth often causes trouble for an academy, and it is within expectations for him to be facing the threat of expulsion. Everyone was stunned again. Musing over his words, his analysis seemed to be correct. To deduce so much from a mere battle technique, the fellow's eye of discernment and analysis ability was beyond that of an ordinary teacher. Good, good! Principal Xia's eyes shone with admiration. Mo Hongyi was right. This was exactly the test he was posing to all of the teachers here. If it was just guiding those students on their cultivation, any single teacher would be capable of it. There would be no need to conduct a selection exercise at all. A truly outstanding teacher would be capable of seeing what others overlook. How can that problem be solved then? An elder asked. Since she has an aversion towards studying, we have to look for a way to invoke her interest in cultivating. On the other hand, since the male student faces the threat of expulsion, we just have to suppress his urge to fight with other students. However, this isn't something that can be accomplished in a day or two. It requires continuous hard work over a period of time, Mo Hongyi said. Good, you've been recruited. Principal Xia and many other elders nodded their heads. To be capable of seeing through the problem in the student's attitude through their battle techniques bore testimony to his eye of discernment. A teacher had to first find the root of a problem before he could deal with them specifically. If they didn't recruit such a talent, who else would they recruit? Is there anyone who still has anything to say? If so, then the ones recruited for this selection exercise will be this Sun Qing Laoshi and Du Sun Laoshi. Principal Xie gestured as he confirmed the names. Sun Qing was the name of the identity Mo Hongyi was impersonating as. I don't have any objections. There is nothing more we can say, so we might as well not humiliate ourselves. Even though the other teachers felt reluctant to give up, it was true that the analysis of the two were the best. They had no choice but to give up. They weren't able to value add to their answers anymore, so there was no point in saying anything else. On good. Then I announce the ones who have passed this selection exercise to be. Just as Principal Xie was about to declare his decision, a voice interjected. Wait a moment! Why don't I say something as well? After which, the young man who came with Sun Qing Laoshi walked up. Zhang Xian. He would have failed the examination if he were to remain silent. Thus, he had no choice but to step up. Seeing him walk over, Mo Hongyi chuckled. He had already said all that he could see, making it impossible for Zhang Xian to say anything else. If this genius who had exceeded him was unable to say anything deeper than that, he would surely fail this selection exercise. Knowing his thoughts, Zhang Xian shook his head. This fellow sure had no sense of camaraderie. He could have left something for him to say, but he chose to touch on everything, leaving Zhang Xian in a spot. This Sun Laoshi and Principal Xie had already revealed the purpose of the test, so there's no use for me to repeat their words once more. Suppressing his dismal, Zhang Xian said, Since there's no use in repeating their words, why don't I solve the problems of these two students on the spot? Solve their problems on the spot? What kind of joke is this? One of them has an aversion towards studying while the other one is facing expulsion. These are the two most difficult problems for a teacher to solve. What kind of solution can you have? Even if there is a solution, it has to be done over a long period of time, just as Sun Qing Laoshi has said. Solving it now? How arrogant! An uproar broke out. As a teacher, the greatest problem one could face was an unmotivated student, and a student who often engages in fights. These two problems had occurred on these two students, and even if one knew the problem, it wasn't an easy feat to solve them. One would have to invest quite a bit of time into it. Yet, this fellow claimed that he was able to solve it on the spot. This made most of the crowd think that he was being overly boastful. Even Principal Xie and the other elders frowned upon hearing Zhang Xian's words. Even they were helpless before them. Yet, this young fellow dared to utter such big words. Wasn't he being too arrogant? Why don't you tell us your solution to their problems? With a darkened face, Principal Xie looked at him with a face of displeasure. Simple! Zhang Xian walked forward to the female student, and whispered a few words in her ears. The female student was first stunned, then a bright shade of red began creeping over her face. After which, she kneeled to the floor and clasped her fist. Teacher, please accept me as your student. I am willing to learn seriously under your tutelage. Ah? What is going on? Upon seeing this sight, the crowd, who thought that he couldn't possibly succeed, nearly keeled over. They had just said that this fellow wouldn't be able to solve this problem when he whispered a few words in her ears, and the attitude of the female student immediately changed, even kneeling on the floor and pleaded with him to accept her as his student. I thought you have an aversion towards studying? Your attitude sure changed faster than the weather. The displeased Principal Xie and the elders widened their eyes in shock, as though they had seen a ghost. Since they found these two students to serve as the topic of the test, it was natural that they knew of their conditions beforehand. This female student's aversion towards studying was exceptionally severe. She was unwilling to listen to her teacher regardless of what her teacher said, needless to say, study. They had thought that it would be impossible to change her attitude in the short term, yet with a mere few words by the teacher before them, she immediately kneeled down. What in the world happened? If not for the fact that they knew it was impossible for Zhang Xian to have cheated, they would have truly suspected that the two of them knew each other in advance, and intentionally played out this show. That. What did you just say to make her attitude change so abruptly? Unable to hold himself back anymore, one of the teachers asked. Instantaneously, everyone's gazes gathered on Zhang Xian. Even Mo Hongi couldn't help but look over with a perplexed expression as well. He could discern that the other party has an aversion towards studying, so naturally, he knew that it was difficult to alter such a mindset. Yet, to change the other party's attitude with just a few words. He, too, wanted to know what kind of words it was that possessed such magical powers. She does have an aversion towards studying, but it isn't because of her disinterest. It is because of her physical condition. Zhang Xian smiled. I saw through her problem and promised her that I will solve it for her, so naturally, she is willing to study under me. The reason why this female student was averse to studying was that of a physical condition. Every time she tried to cultivate, an intense pain would torture her entire body. It is natural that no one would be willing to suffer pain willingly, so eventually, she became averse towards the idea of cultivating that culminated into her disinterest. Given that Zhang Xian was able to see through her condition and even promised to solve it for her, it wasn't surprising for the female student to bow down to him immediately. That simple? If she has a physical condition, why didn't she mention it before? Why did she keep it to herself? Another doubt flashed through everyone's mind. If she had incurred a problem in her cultivation, she could have discussed it with her teacher. Yet, this female student had never brought the matter up before. This is a matter regarding her privacy, so how could she be willing to speak of it? Zhang Xian shook his head. The other party's condition was similar to Zhao Ye's affliction, making it difficult for her to speak of it. Naturally, she found it hard to raise the subject to her teacher. If that's the case, then I won't ask any further. Even though he was curious, Principal Xian knew that it would be inappropriate for Zhang Xian to divulge the other party's private condition, thus he chose not to ask any further. Instead, he turned to the male student and said, What about his problem? If you can make him promise not to fight with other students anymore, we will take it as you have passed this selection exercise and the academy will recruit you as an official teacher. All right. Zhang Xian smiled. Everyone immediately turned to him once more. If it was really that easy to get that male student to make such a promise, Principal Xia wouldn't be so troubled over this issue and wouldn't have set it as the test question for the selection exercise either. They wanted to see what tricks the young man who had just dispelled the female student's aversion towards studying had up his sleeves to stop the male student from fighting with others. Under the watchful gaze of the crowd, Zhang Xian walked up to the male student with a smile. Do you like fighting with others? Yes. The male student nodded. That's simple. With a narrow smile on his face, Zhang Xian suddenly slapped the other party. Pun! Before the male student could react, he felt an ache on his face before he was sent flying upward. The heck? Beating up a student? Doesn't he know that it is forbidden to get physical with a student? What the heck is this fellow up to? Just when they thought that the young man had some good idea to deal with the problem, he suddenly started getting physical. Shocked by the sight before them, they nearly blacked out. Pung 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 puh. Despite the criticisms, the young man continued delivering punches and kicks onto the other party. Every single move of his was brutal, and he didn't hold back at all. Principal Xia's face darkened. However, just as he was about to step forward to stop him, the pummeled student suddenly kneeled onto the floor. Teacher, I promise to never fight with anyone ever again. Ah? Everyone was stunned. Had the world gone insane? Chapter 321. You have been recruited. Done! Zhang Xian clapped his hands with glee. Seeing how casual the other party was, everyone suddenly felt dizzy and an urge to spew blood welled in them. Wasn't he being too eccentric? The teacher guild had explicitly stated that one was not to punish a student physically, yet you had to the cheek to beat the other party up so severely. If the teacher guild were to pursue the matter, no one would be able to shoulder the responsibility. Lu Laoshi, you? Mo Hongi was speechless. He nearly fainted from anger. Teachers aren't allowed to beat students up. Is this fellow for real? It is one thing for you not to know the rules of the master-teacher examination, but you would have at least taken a class before, you would have at least taught some students before. As a 2-star master-teacher examinee, how could you not know these fundamental rules? A teacher was supposed to win over his students by virtue. If the teacher guild were to realize that one had punished a student physically, it is very likely that one's teaching license would be revoked. Beat students up? Who said that I had beaten a student? Zhang Xian glared at the male student. Did I beat you up? No. I am indebted to teacher. You did it to save me, you did not beat me up. The male student quickly kowtowed as he explained through his now incomplete set of teeth. The crowd was thrown into a frenzy. Brother, can you be any more arrogant? Do you think that we are all blind? All of us personally saw you beat the other party up. It is one thing for you not to admit it, but you even threatened the student. This is truly atrocious and deplorable. They had seen ridiculous people, but they had never seen someone who left them so speechless. Humph! Flinging his hands, Principal Xia's face steeled. As the principal and a one-star master teacher, a teacher had beaten up and threatened a student before him. He couldn't simply remain motionless to this matter. Lu Laoshi, punishing a student physically is already a violation of the responsibilities of a teacher. I will report this matter to the teacher guild, so you should prepare yourself for the sanction from the guild. Also, our Tianwu Academy is unwilling to recruit a deplorable and irresponsible teacher like you, so please leave immediately. After which, he pointed to the doors. Sanction? Irresponsible? Zhang Xian was taken aback. He turned to Principal Xia and asked, Is this your judgment on the matter? That's right. Principal Xia harumphed. Fine. Zhang Xian shook his head. Given your eye of discernment, you still call yourself a one-star master teacher? Honestly speaking, I would really like to ask. Are you blind? Pooh. Did this fellow just insult Principal Xia? The heck? He physically punished a student and insulted a one-star master teacher. Is this fellow insane? The other teachers' eyeballs were about to pop out from their sockets. This is the principal of Tianwu Academy, a Zhongshu realm pinnacle expert. In terms of strength, he is ranked in the top 10 of the academy. Not to mention, he is a one-star master teacher as well. To say that he is blind. The heck? They had only thought that he was arrogant a moment ago, but now, they realized that he was insane. Otherwise, how could a teacher who came for a public recruitment beat up a student in public and insult a one-star master teacher? Master teachers were not to be sullied. Just this crime was sufficient to have him killed. The corners of Mo Hongyi's mouth twitched as well. However, he knew that even though Zhang Xian had an eccentric personality and a vile mouth, he had the capability to back it up. Based on his understanding of the latter, it was impossible for him to be insulting Principal Xia for no good reason. Re-examining the male student's condition, he suddenly froze. Meanwhile, Principal Xia was already spurting blood. He was so furious that all of his hair stood at its end, and it felt as though he would erupt at any moment. Lu Laoshi, do you know that you are insulting a master teacher? Suppressing his rage, Principal Xia spat through gritted teeth. If not for his identity, he would have charged up and taught this arrogant fellow a lesson. Insulting a master teacher? Me? Zhang Xian looked at him with a look of pity. Someone is insulting the identity of a master teacher, but it isn't me. It is you. You. Infuriated, Principal Xia was just about to step forward to teach this conceited brat a lesson when the other party walked up to the male student with his hands behind his back and explained calmly. Blood Calamity Spider. It is a unique type of savage beast around the size of a human's thumb. It feeds on the blood of living beings and favors dark and cold habitats. It often moves around in the dark and most importantly, it carries a lethal poison on it. Everyone thought that this fellow was going to say something important, but he talked about an unrelated savage beast instead. Everyone was baffled. Principal Xia came to a halt, and his eyebrows furrowed together. He wanted to see what this fellow had up his sleeves. If a cultivator were to fall prey under this spider's poison, he won't die immediately. However, the venom will numb his nerves and cause a change in his personality. He will become violent, and an urge to battle with others would overwhelm him. This is because only battle could alleviate the boiling poison in his body and bring him peace. Zhang Xian continued. There is actually such a savage beast? Is there really such a peculiar poison in the world? Upon hearing the effects of the poison of the blood calamity spider, a conjecture appeared in everyone's mind. However, they didn't dare to confirm it. Rather, their gaze remained fixated on the young man before them. That's right, this male student had fallen prey to this poison, and it was already at an extremely severe stage. Thus, he couldn't help but fight with others to alleviate his raging emotions. Did you all realize that even though the movements of his battle techniques were sharp and lethal, there was a trace of redness in his eyes? No matter how many battles a cultivator undergoes, it isn't possible for their fights to affect their mental state and change the color of their eyes. Zhang Xian surveyed the surroundings. Trace of redness. I noticed it too, but I thought that it was because of his agitation. That's right, I saw it too. I thought that it was because of his unique battle technique. Could it really be because of a lethal poison? How is that possible? If he was poisoned, why couldn't any of us detect it? Recalling the sight they saw when the male student was displaying his battle technique, everyone froze. There was something bizarre about that male student's gaze, but there were some battle techniques which could change one's gaze as well. Thus, they didn't consider such a possibility. Besides, who would have known that there was a poison in the world which could affect a person's mental state and make them aggressive? I wasn't beating him up just now. I was using a unique method to force the poison out of his body. If you don't believe me, you can look at the blood on the floor. Zhang Xian casually pointed. Following his finger, the crowd saw the blood that flowed out from the apertures of the male student when Lu Laoshi beat him up just a moment ago. To their horror, the blood was thick and black in color. The blood had curdled on the spot and the stones in contact with it corroded, causing a dent to appear. It was an extremely eerie sight. There was really lethal poison. Principal Xia's face turned pale. It was impossible for normal blood to curdle so quickly, even less so, corrode stone. Such a situation would only occur if the blood was harnessing a lethal poison. Which meant to say, there was lethal poison within the male student. And Lu Laoshi wasn't beating him up just now, he was expelling his poison. Usually, one would die within 3 months of falling prey to the blood calamity spider's poison. Judging from his current state, he should only be a month in, so he isn't in any danger. That's also the reason why he was still able to suppress the poison with his cultivation, making it impossible for anyone to notice it. Zhang Xian turned to Principal Xia and said, Even so, despite being the top academy in Tianwu Kingdom, how could you all not know that one of your students had fallen prey to lethal poison? It is out of kindness that I saved him, yet you framed me of beating him up and even threatened to report this to the teacher guild. You're the principal of the academy as well as a 1-star master teacher. How could you fail to see through this much? May I ask? If you aren't blind, what else could it be? Principal Xia's face paled. The black poisoned blood was an extremely clear sign that the male student had been poisoned. However, overwhelmed by rage, Principal Xia actually overlooked the matter. He even bellowed at the other party for beating the male student up. Embarrassed, his face flushed. He wanted to explain, but words evaded him. Lu Laoshi, please calm down. Poison master is an uncommon occupation and very few people have knowledge of it. It's normal for one not to know of it. Sensing the awkwardness of the situation, Mo Hongyi interjected. He was right. Most of the information regarding poison had been sealed by the poison hall, so most people were uninformed about the matter. Furthermore, teachers prided themselves on being righteous. As such, they rarely came into contact with something as vile as poison, so naturally, they would have very limited knowledge on them. Knowing that it was impossible for Zhang Xian to insult the other party for no good reason, he had re-examined the condition of the male student. When he saw the poison in the blood he spat, he was also thrown into a state of shock. To be able to tell that the other party had been poisoned just through his battle technique, and even solve it. This meant that Zhang Xian's mastery of poison had most probably reached the level of a grandmaster. 3-star painter, 2-star beast tamer, and pill forging skills exceeding that of a 4-star apothecary. How many hidden capabilities was this fellow hiding up his sleeves? Initially, he had thought that even though the other party was superior in terms of pill forging and teaching, it would just be limited to those. However, after this incident, he realized that the other party was skilled in many other occupations as well, just that he hadn't displayed it before him. Even if you didn't know that it was lethal poison, that student had already said that I am saving him. Yet you still chose to doubt me. Is this the discerning ability that a one-star master teacher should have? Oblivious to Mo Hongyi's attempt to alleviate the atmosphere, Zhang Xian continued. Upon hearing those words, everyone went speechless. The male student did say that you were saving him, but you had just finished beating him up then, not to mention your ferocious glare. No matter who saw this, they would have thought that you were threatening him. Intimidated, he would have no choice but to answer that way. Who would have known that he truly meant it? It's due to my lack of observation. I am truly unworthy of the title of one-star master teacher. Under Zhang Xian's intense interrogation, Principal Xia's face paled and he looked as though he had aged a decade. He was supposed to be the one conducting the test for the public recruitment, but little did he know that he himself had failed to notice so many crucial details. All right, there's no need to be depressed. Just continue learning earnestly and don't come to a conclusion recklessly before clarifying the situation. Zhang Xian shook his hands casually. Everyone staggered. This was the principal of Tianwu Academy. Yet he was being lectured as though he was a student by a mere ordinary teacher. Everyone was completely speechless, but at the same time, they were also astonished by this Lu Shi's means. Not only did he manage to locate the root of the problems of the two students, something that even Principal Xia overlooked, he was even able to treat the two of them easily. Be it his eye of discernment or his means, it was at an astounding level. If not for them witnessing this sight personally, they would have never believed it to be possible. In an instant they were all filled with amazement and respect for this young teacher. Just when everyone's gazes were gathered on him, wanting to know how he managed to notice the lethal poison in the male student's body, Lu Shi's majestic aura suddenly dissipated. Like an expectant student waiting for his examination results, he scratched his head awkwardly and asked, "This. So, will I be accepted into the academy?" Of course, you're accepted into the academy." Hearing Zhang Xian's question, Principal Xia's vision suddenly turned dark, but he hurriedly nodded his head anyway. If you're not accepted into this academy even with such high-level capabilities, then I would really be unworthy to be the principal of the academy. Chapter 322, Mu Xiuqing's Countermeasure. Mu Xiuqing was a talented student of Tianwu Academy. Despite being only 18 this year, she had already reached Pixue realm with over a dozen acupoints opened up. Given her fame and the bright future laid before her, she should have been happy. Yet she had been in low spirits recently. This was because her teacher had left the academy. Since the new teacher wasn't here yet, she was left to her own devices and was currently lazing around. Stretching her back, a beautiful curvature which could easily send any man into frenzy appeared. "Senior!" At this moment, a youngster walked over. "Meng Tao, what news have you uncovered? Is it reliable?" Upon seeing the approaching person, Mu Xiuqing immediately turned to face him with a serious expression etched on her face. "I have looked into the matter, and that master teacher Zhang Xian is indeed an incredible figure. In fact, based on what I've just found out, he seems to be even more amazing than how you made him out to be. However, I heard that he is in the midst of his 2-star master teacher examination and has to leave the capital for a while." The eyes of the youngster named Meng Tao gleamed in reverence. "Tell me about it." Mu Xiuqing blushed. Last night, when the news of genius Mo Hongyi's records being broken reached her ears, the name of master teacher Zhang Xian was also brought to her attention. Despite being under 20, he had achieved many outstanding feats, leaving others amazed and frenzied. In fact, he was even already in the midst of taking his 2-star master teacher examination. Even though she heard it directly from an elder in her clan, she still found the matter hard to believe. After confirming the matter several times, she decided that from then onwards, Zhang Shi would be her number one idol. Thus, when she arrived at the academy this morning, she immediately told her juniors of this matter, and the news left all of them gasping in amazement as well. The junior before her, Meng Tao, had refused to believe this matter, so she had him check for himself. I heard that when Zhang Shi arrived at the capital, he went to the Painter Guild to take the painter examination. Over there, he was met with provocation by the Ji clan's GMO Gongzi, and eventually, he used a savage beast to create a 5th-level painting, earning him the rank of a 3-star painter, Meng Tao said. Initially, he couldn't believe that someone could be more impressive than Mo Hongyi. After all, Mo Hongyi's reputation as the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom was already deep-rooted in the capital. However, after looking into the matter, he realized that not only was Zhang Shi more capable than Mo Hongyi, the gap between them was huge as well. Even after verifying the news personally, he still found it hard to believe. He had to pinch himself to make sure that it wasn't just a dream. Using a savage beast to paint a 5th-level painting? Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. As a genius, she revered other geniuses as well. Although the name of Zhang Shi was only established the day before, the number of legendary feats he had achieved was overwhelming, leaving her with no other choice but to be awed. Say, now that our teacher has left, if the academy can get Zhang Shi to be our replacement teacher, how wonderful will that be? Even though the news gathered by her junior was identical to what Mu Xueqing had heard last night, she couldn't help but feel another surge of admiration for the young master teacher. Bring him in? Senior, Zhang Shi is a figure who is going to become a 2-star master teacher. How can the academy afford to hire him? Meng Tao was speechless. There were only 3 2-star master teachers in Tianwu Kingdom, and every time they held a lecture, all teachers, including the principal, would attend it, to invite the other party over as their teacher. It was nothing more than a pipe dream. I know it as well, but I can't help but hold such expectations. I really wish that I can listen to his lecture once. Given how talented he is, his lessons must be deep and profound. Perhaps I might even achieve a breakthrough in my cultivation just by listening to one of his lessons, Mu Xueqing said with a dreamy look. Right, isn't the academy recruiting teachers today? Are the results out yet? There's not much news circulating at the moment, but from what I gathered, there is only a handful of star teachers applying for the position. The rest of them are just some ordinary teachers. I doubt they will be able to teach us anything good. Meng Tao shook his head. He didn't bear much expectations for the new teachers. That's true. Mu Xueqing nodded as well. If they were good, they would have long been brought into Tianwu Academy. They wouldn't have the need to attend the public recruitment at such a timing. Bad news, bad news. Just when the two of them were discussing the matter of the new teacher, they heard an anxious voice. Then, a lady rushed in with a reddened face. Calm down, don't panic. What's wrong? Mu Xueqing frowned. Didn't I ask you to camp outside the Elder Hall to check out the accepted teachers? Why are you already back? Wait, could it be that the results are already out? Yes. Panting, the lady hurriedly nodded her head. So fast? Mu Xueqing was taken aback. According to the news, there were over 100 teachers who attended the public recruitment today. By right, it should have taken a significant amount of time to sift through them. I saw the principal pass the identity tokens of our class over to a young teacher. After taking a few deep breaths, the lady finally managed to catch her breath and she started recounting the situation. A young teacher? That teacher seems to be in his 20s. Since I was too far away, I didn't manage to hear anything. However, I saw. Even now, the lady still found it hard to believe what she saw to be true. You are murdering us with anxiety. What did you see? Mu Xueqing glared at her and hurriedly urged her on. I saw the teacher beating up a freshman to the point the other party was vomiting blood. The lady said. He beat up a freshman to the point the other party was vomiting blood? Mu Xueqing and Meng Tao glanced at one another in horror. A teacher beating up a student? Such violence was unheard of in Tianwu Academy. It's true. I've seen it with my own eyes. This is what I've secretly recorded down previously. Look. With a flick of her wrist, the lady produced a record crystal. Infusing Jinchi into it, two figures instantly appeared on it. Taking a closer look, a young man was beating up a student. Pun! The student spurted a mouthful of blood, and eventually, he kneeled before the young man. As the scene was recorded from a distance, they were unable to hear the conversation taking place inside the elder hall. Even so, they could clearly see the tragic state of the pummeled student. You said that the principal gave our identity tokens to this fellow? After seeing that sight, Mu Xueqing's face turned ashen. What in the world was going on? How could they hire such an aggressive person to be their teacher? Indeed, I witnessed it myself. Furthermore, the lady uttered nervously before she pausing for a brief moment. After grabbing the tokens, he immediately started walking toward our class. He should be arriving soon. Arriving soon? Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. Doesn't the teacher guild prohibit teachers from getting physical with students? Why would the academy hire this kind of teacher? The lady shook her head. I don't know either. Senior, could it be that the academy knew that our class is uncontrollable, so they intentionally found such a teacher to teach us a lesson and beat us into submission? Meng Tao scratched his head. Beat us into submission? Humph, let's see if he has the capability to do so. Mu Xueqing's face darkened. Meng Tao, get everyone to stop cultivating and gather here. All right. Meng Tao nodded and hurriedly left. Soon, slightly more than a dozen students gathered around Mu Xueqing. Senior. I believe that Meng Tao should have told you about what happened earlier. The academy has hired that vile fellow who gets physical with students on a whim to be our teacher. About this issue, what thoughts do you all have? After saying so, Mu Xueqing glanced at the crowd. If he were to become our teacher, our lives will become a living hell. I oppose to it. However, what can we do about it? The academy has assigned him to us, and our identity tokens are already in his hands. Unless we head to the administrative office to request for a teacher switch, there's nothing we can do in this situation. Since the academy has sent him to us, it definitely won't allow us to switch to the other classes. Since it came down to this, let's think of a way to chase him away so that we can get a better teacher here. Even if we can't get a genius like Zhang Shi, we have to at least have a star teacher. If we were to come under the tutelage of an aggressive fellow like him, our future will be ruined. The crowd harumphed indignantly. Meng Tao had already explained the situation, and he had shown them the recording in the record crystal as well. Every single one of them felt infuriated upon seeing the teacher laying his hands on a student, especially since it was to the point that the student was vomiting blood. Given how brutal he was in treating his students, how could he be worthy of being a teacher? They expected them to become the students of such a person? Dream on! Alright, there's no use talking about it. Since the academy has passed our identity tokens to him, we are already his students. We have to find a way to chase him away. Mu Xueqing raised her hand to get the others to calm down. Why don't we intentionally go against him to trip him up? Trip him up? How do you intend to do it? For example, let's refuse to follow all of his instructions. As a teacher, realizing that he is powerless in the class, he would surely leave on his own accord soon. This might be useful against others, but that fellow is an aggressive person. If we were to really disobey his instructions and he were to get physical with us, who would be able to stand against him? The group fell silent. Regardless of what plans they had, the main problem was that this new teacher was an aggressive person. If he were to lay his hands on them, given the disparity in their strength, it would be impossible for them to stand up against him. After all, even the strongest person among them, Mu Xueqing, was only at Pixue realm. Given their strength, it was impossible for them to stand against a Tongxian realm cultivator. How about this? If he were to really lay his hands on us, let's record the scene down using a record crystal and find a way to send it to the teacher guild. I don't believe that the guild will ignore such a matter. It is a good idea, but given how that teacher dared to beat up a student before the principal, elders, and so many teachers, he must have connections there. Or perhaps he might even be backed by the academy. If we were to screw this matter up, he might make things worse for us. Indeed. If he were to know that we are plotting his downfall, won't he oppress us even further? The crowd proposed several more plans, but they were all vetoed. Given how their new teacher was able to beat up a student before so many teachers, he must have had the backing of the principal. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to act so brazenly. The idea of recording down the scene was not bad, but if it were to land in his hands before reaching the teacher guild, they would have a tough life ahead of them. They had devised a plan properly so as to solve the problem once and for all. Otherwise, once they were to alarm him, their life would just get worse. What should we do? Senior, do you have any ideas? After racking their brains, they found that they were unable to think of a feasible plan. Eventually, everyone turned their sights to Mu Xueqing. She was the de facto leader of the class, and everyone obeyed her words. I do have an idea! Mu Xueqing's eyes suddenly lit up. Looking at the crowd, she said, We are all students, and if we were to try to torment our teacher, once the teacher guild learns of it, we'll surely be punished. Or even worse, if the word of the matter were to spread, our reputation might fall to the gutters. The crowd nodded. In this world, teachers were an esteemed existence, and students were expected to obey their teachers' commands. If it was discovered that they tried to harm their own teacher, they would definitely suffer the condemnation of the public, and their families wouldn't let them off easily as well. Then what should we do? Meng Tao asked anxiously. Since we can't do anything to our teacher then, we should still be allowed to ask questions, right? A mischievous glint appeared in Mu Xueqing's eyes. There are quite a few students in our class who like painting, tea ceremony, formations, equipment forging, pill forging. We can ask questions about these. If he is unable to answer those questions, let's see if he still has the cheek to remain here. That's a good idea. This way, not only will we not offend him, he will also be too embarrassed to remain here. 2 birds with 1 stone. That's a good plan. Hearing Mu Xueqing's idea, everyone's eyes lit up. This was indeed a good plan. Not only would they not offend the other party, they could also humiliate him at the same time. Wait. He is supposed to be a teacher guiding us on our cultivation. If we were to ask about these, he could just say that he isn't adept in those occupations. If so, our plan will be foiled. One of the female students spoke up. Every teacher had their own expertise. Given Tianwu Academy's size, it was natural that they had teachers specializing in the various occupations as well. It was clear that they were up to something if they were to pose all of these questions to a single teacher. Besides, as a teacher specializing in cultivation, it wasn't embarrassing for him to be unable to answer questions on other occupations. After all, it wasn't possible for one to be adept in all occupations. I have already thought of that as well. We can just exert some pressure on him. Mu Xueqing seemed to have already thought of a countermeasure, and a hint of a smile flashed across her beautiful eyes. Exert some pressure on him? That's right. Later, when that teacher arrives, I will say that I have met with Master Teacher Zhang Xian and he has expressed the intention to accept me as his student. Mu Xueqing smiled. If that's the case, with Zhang Shi as a backing, that teacher will surely be intimidated. He probably will be hesitant to go too far, and he will be too embarrassed to admit to knowing nothing at all as well. Just that, if Zhang Shi were to realize that we had made use of his name, won't we be in trouble? A student asked hesitantly. How is that possible? Zhang Shi is an amazing genius, not to mention, he's a 2-star master teacher as well. We probably won't even get a chance to meet him in our entire life. Who asked him to suddenly become so famous all of a sudden, so much that everyone in the streets is talking about him? Besides, it's just a name, he probably won't ever find out about it. Mu Xueqing flung her hair. The world that Zhang Shi lived in was vastly different from theirs. It was impossible for them to ever be associated with him. Since he had become a huge topic in the past 2 days, they could make use of his name to intimidate that aggressive teacher. All right, let's do it this way then. After contemplating for a moment, the group felt that there wasn't too much of a problem with the plan and they nodded in agreement. When that teacher arrives, make sure not to display your hostility. All of you must be respectful to him so as to not allow him to grab hold of any of your handles, Mu Xiuqing instructed. Yes, the group answered. Is this the class I will be taking? Just when the group was busy plotting against Zhang Xian himself was currently standing outside the classroom, looking around to verify that he had come to the right location. Chapter 323, You're Expelled. After Lu Laoshi had settled the problems of the two students, Principal Xie no longer doubted his capability and passed the class token over. Based on his teaching experience in Hongtian Academy, he knew that each of these tokens represented a student. Placing them in his storage ring, he started walking toward his classroom. The school was vast, and he got lost several times. It was only after grabbing a passerby and verifying the directions several times that he finally reached his classroom. Jia! Pushing the door open, he walked in. The classroom was much wider than those in Hongtian Academy. It was around 700 to 800 meters square big, and the ground was forged using smooth bluestone. On the two ends there was a sculpted savage beast each, adding an aura of grandness to the classroom. In the center of the room, there were slightly more than a dozen of students surrounding a beautiful lady. They were absorbed in a discussion, and as such, none of them seemed to sense his presence. Zhang Xian shook his head. The sound of him pushing the open wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft enough for him to go unnoticed either. For all of them to be oblivious to his presence, they were truly lacking in alertness. Walking forward, he was just about to address them when he heard the content of their conversation. Senior, did you really meet Master Teacher Zhang Xian yesterday? And he said that he wanted to take you in as his student? That is Master Teacher Zhang Xian, the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom. I really want to meet him too. Senior, if you were to become his student, you must bring me to meet him. I am his loyal fan. Same here. The students surrounding that lady had faces flushed with excitement, as if they were fans talking about their idol. Met me? And I intended to take her in as my student? Zhang Xian was stunned. He hurriedly took a closer look at that lady. He was certain that he had never met that girl before, needless to say, accepting that lady as his student. Besides, he spent the entire day at the Master Teacher Pavilion yesterday, and he came here for the public recruitment right after leaving the library. Thus, how could he have met a Tianwu Academy student? After all, he was someone who didn't even know where the academy was at. Zhang Shi is currently in the midst of conducting a mission for his 2-star Master Teacher examination, and by the time he's back, he will already be a 2-star Master Teacher. Even though it'll be difficult, I will plead with him to conduct a lecture for us. The lady in the middle grinned. However, halfway through her words, she suddenly noticed Zhang Xian and she frowned. Who are you? Why are you in our classroom? Voila! The moment she said those words, the students surrounding her immediately turned around to stare at Zhang Xian with guarded expressions. I have come under the dispatchment of the academy to be your teacher for this term. Facing their gazes, Zhang Xian said. Our teacher? The students were taken aback. As the recording in the record crystal was taken from quite a distance away, they weren't able to see Zhang Xian's appearance clearly. However, after hearing that he had beaten a student up, they thought that he would be a bulky person. They didn't think that he would look so refined. Lu Cheng, whom Zhang Xian was impersonating, was a 24-year-old young man with a slim build. Even though Zhang Xian thought that the other party's appearance was far from a match to his, at the very least, it was still pleasant to the eye. Paying respect to teacher. The lady in the center coughed, and only then did everyone recover from their daze. They hurriedly bowed and greeted Zhang Xian. My name is Lu Qing, and you all can call me Lu Laoshi. I will be guiding you all on your cultivation from now onward. After that, Zhang Xian walked up to the lecture stand and sat down. Then, he turned to the lady in the center and asked, You have met Master Teacher Zhang Xian? Reporting to Lu Laoshi, it was just a stroke of good luck. Mu Xiuqing hurriedly nodded her head. So you really met him? May I know how he looks like? Zhang Xian continued asking. Not expecting Lu Laoshi to ask such a question, Mu Xueqing hesitated for a moment before answering. He is slightly taller than Lu Laoshi, and he has a muscular build. When I met him then, he was dressed in a green robe. His eyes are electrifying and his smile is charming. He gives a feeling of one who is unsullied by the world, as though a deity in the heavens. Even though she had heard numerous stories about Zhang Shi, no one had ever described his appearance. Even so, she had no choice but to answer Lu Laoshi's question. If she didn't, it would definitely incur the other party's suspicion. Thus, she could only describe him based on her imagination. A bizarre expression appeared on Zhang Xian's face. Zhang Xian was at least aware of how high he stood. Since when did he possess such outstanding appearance? Based on my knowledge, if a 2-star master teacher intends to accept a student, countless people would definitely jump at that opportunity. Furthermore, Master Teacher Zhang Xian is a genius among geniuses, so there must be many talented students interested in coming under his tutelage. So, why would he accept you as his student? He was already sure that the other party was lying, and based on the expressions of the crowd, he could roughly deduce what they were up to. Thus, Zhang Xian continued questioning. Not expecting this aggressive teacher to ask such difficult questions, Mu Xueqing swayed from side to side. Suppressing the urge to spurt blood, she mustered her courage and continued on with the story. I helped him on a minor affair yesterday, and upon realizing that my talent is still acceptable, Zhang Shi decided to take me in. As for the details, I don't really know either. I see. Since Zhang Shi is willing to take you in, as a normal teacher, I don't think that I'm qualified to vie with him over a student. You do have the right to choose your teacher as well. Here is your identity token, you should go to him. Flicking his wrist, Zhang Xian took out a token and threw it over. Zhang Xian didn't know who the lady was, but her blood was infused into the token. By matching the aura of the two, Zhang Xian was still able to find her token easily. What do you mean? Mu Xueqing subconsciously grabbed the token, but she was in a daze. This wasn't how it should have gone. It was impossible for one to only have a single teacher in his entire life. It should be an honor for a student to have a master teacher value his students. Shouldn't Lu Laoshi value her more after hearing that Zhang Shi was interested in accepting her? What did he mean by throwing the token over? I don't mean anything. Zhang Xian shrugged casually. Lifting his eyelids slightly, he said, It just means that you're expelled. Expelled? Mu Xueqing's body shuddered, and she nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. I am a genius. Regardless of where I go, I am someone who all teachers want under their tutelage. Yet, to expel me at first sight? Are you sure you aren't joking? That's right. As a student, instead of studying, you choose to use your wits to fool your teacher. Of what use are you to me? Don't worry. I'll report this matter to the academy and have them post an announcement to inform all students of the matter. Thus, you can feel free to go to Zhang Shi. Zhang Xian said calmly. Mu Xueqing's body trembled. Due to her appearance and her talent, she was one of the most celebrated students in the academy. If the entire school were to know of her expulsion, how could she face others in the future? She knew that this teacher was eccentric, but this was way too eccentric. Based on her predictions, even if the other party didn't believe that she was acquainted with Zhang Shi, he would at least be intimidated. After all, what if, against all odds, she was really acquainted with Zhang Shi? Even the principal would have to take her seriously if that was the case. Yet this fellow, he didn't even bother to weigh the consequences before expelling her from his class. If scoring poorly in the teacher qualification examination was the most shameful matter for a teacher, then being expelled was the most shameful matter for a student. Even if her cultivation were to reach a high level, this blemish would continue to remain with her no matter where she goes. I am not fooling, teacher. Gritting her teeth, Mu Xueqing hurriedly spoke up. You aren't fooling me? Zhang Xian shook his head. Standing up, he placed his hands behind his back and walked slowly around the classroom. Firstly, despite the sound I made coming in, you, as a Pixia realm cultivator, didn't notice me at all. Instead, you continued chatting with the others. Do you think that it makes sense? You chose to disregard the presence of a teacher. This is flouting Clause 17 of the Student Guidelines of Tianwu Academy, disrespecting one's teacher. In severe cases, one is even susceptible to being expelled. Also, to intentionally say that you know Master Teacher Zhang Xian before me. Let's put aside the question of whether it is real or not. If it is real, it means that you are using Zhang Shi's reputation to oppress me. Based on Clause 42 of the Student Guidelines, making use of your background to disrespect one's teacher or even threaten him is prohibited. In severe cases, one might even be expelled. On the other hand, if it is false, that means that you are lying to your teacher. This is flouting Clause 45 of the Student Guidelines, spreading false rumors to mislead or deceive a teacher. This is also a clause going against whom calls for expulsion. Regardless of which it is, if we were to operate strictly by the rules, you will be expelled. What else do you have to say for yourself? The Student Guidelines of Tianwu Academy were pasted all over the academy. On his way here, Zhang Xian had passed by it numerous times, and he had long memorized them all. This bunch of children wanted to climb over his head. Since that was the case, he should first teach them that he wasn't one to be trifled with. Mu Xueqing's face became devoid of color. Staggering backward, she stared at Zhang Xian as though he was a monster. Didn't he just arrive at the academy? Why is he so familiar with the Student Guidelines? More importantly, I thought that he is a person who settles matters physically. Why are his verbal skills equally powerful? Pack up your things and leave. I welcome students with their own opinions and thoughts, but I don't welcome students who fan others to stand against me. Zhang Xian gestured. With just a single word, this lady was able to get the other students to greet him. It was clear that she wielded great prestige among the group. If he didn't intimidate them on the first meeting, it would be impossible for Zhang Xian to control them in the future. Teaching wasn't confining one's students to follow strictly by one's instructions. However, if Zhang Xian failed to establish his superior position on the first meeting, he wouldn't be able to control them once they rebelled. More importantly, the students wouldn't learn anything like that. They would underestimate you, and naturally, they wouldn't learn properly from you as well. Teacher. Senior Mu is the most talented student in our class. Despite being only 18 this year, she has already reached Pixue realm. She is our goal and direction, so we beseech teacher to rescind your order. Seeing that the new teacher was going to expel their leader as soon as he arrived, Meng Tao immediately stood forward. Most talented student? Goal and direction? She started training when she was 7, and it has been 11 years since then. During that time, she consumed 3 acupoint soothing pill and 10 other pills, but even so, she only managed to open 12 acupoints, giving her a strength of 16 ding. Despite having learned the floating water palm for 3 years, she has only reached minor accomplishment in it. Furthermore, she isn't adept in it yet, and in a battle, she is unable to bring out its full might. On top of that, at least 7 of her acupoints are completely sealed by her turbid Jinqi, making it difficult for her to advance in her cultivation. Even reaching Tongxian realm will be a huge hurdle for her. At that point, Zhang Xian turned to Meng Tao and spoke composedly. This can be called talented as well? You must be joking. Mu Xueqing's face immediately turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Chapter 324. The dumbfounded students. Everyone knew that her cultivation speed was amazing, and that she was a genius. However, none of them knew that it was because of her clan. Furthermore, due to the excessive number of pills she had consumed in the past few years, pill poison had accumulated in her body, making it extremely difficult for her to raise her cultivation. Otherwise, she could have long applied for graduation upon reaching Pixue realm. She wouldn't have to remain in the academy all this while. Not a single teacher had noticed her condition, not even the previous teacher who she was fond of. Yet, this person was able to point out her condition accurately despite having just met her. This was way too fearsome. Could it be that he wasn't an aggressive teacher, but someone who possessed true capability? Mu Xueqing's body trembled. If that wasn't the case, how was he able to tell that 7 acupoints had been sealed with her turbid Jinqi, and that it would be hard for her to reach Tongxian realm with just a single gaze. Meng Tao also didn't expect this teacher to know so much either. Even though he had been with Senior Mu daily for several years, he didn't know of this matter either. Frozen on the spot, he wanted to speak up for his senior, but couldn't find the words to say. In the previous academy tournament, Senior Mu was ranked number 10. She is one of the most talented geniuses in the academy, and everyone agrees on it. Why, are you saying that she isn't a genius? A female student couldn't accept Zhang Xian's judgment. Being a genius isn't about how far one can progress in a limited period of time, but how far one is able to go. It is incredible that she has reached Pixia realm at her age, but due to pill poison accumulating in her body and the fact that she has cultivated a mindset of reliance on them, her future growth is limited. Zhang Xian shook his head. Since he was taking over the class, he was given basic information on the students. Matching it with the students, he could tell that this lady with appearance that could match Wang Ying's was the strongest student in the class, Mu Xueqing. Knowing her name, it wasn't too difficult to look into her background. Mu Xueqing's father was a famous 2-star apothecary. What others deemed as incomparably valuable pills wasn't anything much to her. While it provided her an edge over the other students, it also created a fatal flaw for her future cultivation. Even though Zhang Xian didn't use the Library of Heaven's Path, given his soul depth of 10.1 and his expertise as an apothecary, he was able to discern and deduce Mu Xueqing's condition with a glance. After all, he used his own strength to take the 2-star master teacher examination. If he couldn't even see this much, it would have been impossible for him to pass the first 4 tests. This Mu Xueqing's cultivation was not bad, but she was too reliant on pills. This was detrimental to her future growth. All medicine possessed poison, and the same applied for pills as well. Of course, that was assuming that the pills didn't reach the level of an inscribed pill. Be it formation, satiation, or perfection, considerable amount of impurities still remained in those pills. Without pure Jinqi to wash away these impurities, it was very easy for the pill poison to accumulate and block one's acupoints, slowing down the progress of one's cultivation. This was precisely the reason why many people choose not to consume pills unless they were unable to achieve a breakthrough with their own strength. It was just like with an illness. If one could tide through it easily, very few people would choose to resort to medicine even if they knew that medicine would help them recover faster. Her current cultivation speed was outstanding. Furthermore, with a 2-star apothecary of a father guiding her along, her foundation was strong as well. However, as time passed, she would slowly lose out to her peers. In fact, it was a huge question whether she could even reach Tongxian realm or not. The pill poison was one problem, but the mindset she formed which made her reliant on pills was another one. As she achieved breakthroughs in her cultivation relying on medicine, she had already lost confidence in herself. She isn't a genius. In fact, you are in a much better position than her. Zhang Xian turned to the female student who had just spoken up for Mu Xueqing and said, "Even though your cultivation is only at Pixia realm primary stage, you have trained your physical body well, and your state of mind is steady as well. If I'm not wrong, there's a beast tamer in your family who used the blood essence of a savage beast to help you raise your cultivation. Such a method is similar to consuming medicine to raise one cultivation, but as the blood essence of savage beasts is more compatible with the human body, not only will it not hinder your cultivation, it will even make your muscles more compact, thus raising your strength. If I'm not wrong, you should be capable of battling against Pixia realm intermediate stage opponents." The female student nearly leaped in shock. Her father was a 1-star beast tamer, and before she reached Pixia realm, she had consumed the blood essence of a savage beast. This made her physical body significantly stronger than an ordinary cultivator's, thus granting her the strength to fight against those with cultivation exceeding hers. She had only told this matter to a few good friends, so it was impossible for the academy to know of it. Yet, this teacher was able to point it out with a single glance. This was way too scary. However, while the blood essence of a savage beast is not bad, there's a saying that the weak must be slowly nourished. There won't be severe side effects if a male were to consume it, but for you. The body of a female is already weak, and while triggering your physical functions through the blood essence might grant you significant strength in the short run, as time goes by, all kinds of invisible side effects will start appearing. It is just as if a severely ill patient consumed 1,000-year-old ginseng. Not only will his illness not be treated, it might even claim his life. Zhang Xian shook his head. The female student's skin was slightly red, and her blood was boiling forcefully. Her condition showed signs of the beast tamer's secret arts. Even though it wasn't written in the information provided by the Academy, it wasn't too difficult for Zhang Xian to deduce this much. You as well. After speaking on the two ladies' circumstances, Zhang Xian's gaze landed on Meng Tao. You have a reserved personality, and there is a shroud of scholarly aura around you. Also, I can see several calluses between your thumb and your middle finger, and I don't think that there's any battle technique that would result in that. Furthermore, there is a slight patch of darkness at the corner of your shirt. If I'm not wrong, you should be fond of painting, and you often imitate the drawings of experts. However, it is a pity that you aren't looking deep enough, resulting in your failure to capture the essence and spirit of whatever you see. If you are to continue painting like that, it is unlikely that you will ever create a spiritual canvas or infused intentions level painting. As for you, you must be interested in tea ceremony. I can catch a slight aroma of tea from you and it smells refreshing as well. However, you have been spending more time on the way of tea than your cultivation, causing the latter to stagnate and become unstable. If I'm not wrong, you haven't achieved a breakthrough in a year's time. Furthermore, your will in cultivation is lacking. You often ignore your teacher's instructions and spend your time thinking about other matters. You are the typical example of a person who gets easily distracted by toys. With his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian pointed out the conditions of 4 students straightforwardly, and there was no mistake in his words at all. Everyone was shocked and dumbfounded. The entire room fell silent. What in the world was going on? They had just decided to intentionally ask him questions on their other occupations so as to embarrass him, but, before they could say anything, he had deduced their occupations and spoke about them casually. Could it be that this teacher was skilled in all occupations? If that wasn't the case, how could he deduce so easily based on an ink mark on the corner of his shirt and the scent on the other's body that Meng Tao liked painting and the other male student was interested in tea ceremony? This was way too scary. Alright, show me your battle techniques. Seeing that he had managed to amaze everyone, Zhang Xian turned to the remaining students and said. The situation with the first 4 was more apparent, and he was well versed in their occupations as well. Thus, he was able to speak of them easily. On the other hand, he couldn't do the same for the remaining students. Tianwu Academy was completely different from that countryside Hongtian Academy. Other than cultivating, most students would take on an occupation that they liked as well. Even though most of them wouldn't even reach the level of an apprentice, it could serve as a hobby and a way to train their state of mind. It was just like Lu Shi and the others learning the way of tea from Elder Tian. Their understanding of tea ceremony hadn't reached the level of an apprentice, but this didn't hinder their interest in it at all. These fellows were the same as well. Even though they had learned a little of their supporting occupation, they were still a considerable distance away from reaching the level of an apprentice. Yes. Amazed by the teacher before them, the others immediately executed their battle technique, not daring to hesitate at all. In an instant, the howling of the wind roared in the entire classroom. A moment later, Zhang Xian nodded his head. He had to say that the students in Tianwu Academy were at a much higher caliber than those in Hongtian Academy. Regardless of whether it was their battle techniques, cultivation techniques, or their understanding toward their supporting occupation, it wasn't something that Zhu Hong, and Mo Xiao, and the others could compare to. The battle technique, White Canary in the Clear Skies, you practiced has swift and powerful movements, but you aren't able to catch up with their pace. Furthermore, your Jinqi is too lacking to train in this technique. If you were to meet with a slightly stronger opponent, without even moving, if he were to attack your armpit, you would immediately fall in defeat. The reason why there is such a situation is because you aren't serious about your training. If I'm not wrong, Your supporting occupation should be a blacksmith. A blacksmith needs to refine all kinds of ores and metals, and this requires great strength. Wielding the hammer for extended periods of time caused the strength of your right arm to far surpass your left, resulting in imbalance. A bird has a pair of wings, and if one wing is stronger than the other, it would be weird if a problem didn't occur. You must be interested in appraising. However, it is a pity that appraising is a money-burning occupation. Judging from how tattered your uniform is, you must have worn it for more than half a year already. Which is to say, your family isn't too well off. Despite not possessing the money, why are you learning appraisal? Without coming into contact with true treasures, will you be able to identify a treasure if you see one? As for you, you are dedicated to your cultivation training, and as such, you didn't pick any supporting occupation. This isn't anything much, but did you realize that even though you are diligent in your training, you didn't improve much? This isn't because you aren't working hard enough or are lacking in talent. It is because you are cultivating wrongly. It should have been a wide and open cultivation technique, but you cultivated it as though a close and confined technique. Walking among the students, every single seemingly casual word of Zhang Xian would cause a student to pale and sweat profusely. This Lu Laoshi was able to tell the problems in their cultivation and supporting occupations through their battle technique, and his words were spot on. His discerning ability was truly at a frightening level. It was almost terrifying. Their supporting occupations were at a very low mastery, barely coming into contact with the basics, but they spanned over 7 to 8 occupations. Furthermore, Zhang Xian spoke the same words as those said by their supporting occupation teachers. This wasn't a feat that a normal cultivation teacher should be capable of. In fact, they felt that even a master teacher might not be as discerning as him. This. Mu Xueqing was completely dumbfounded. It was just a moment ago that she confidently said that as long as they asked him some questions on their occupations, this new teacher would definitely back down. Yet, before they could say anything, the other party had already stripped them bare, pointing out to them all their flaws. Aren't you a teacher who dealt with students through violence? Aren't you just a normal teacher, one who hasn't even reached the level of a star teacher? Why do you seem to know everything? Why do you seem to be adept in everything? What kind of monster did the Academy send them? Chapter 325 The Shocked Elders Elder Hall. The teachers who came for the public recruitment had all left, and Principal Xia was gone as well. All that were left were the elders. The class by Fan Laoshi left behind is one of the best classes in the entire academy, as well as the one that's the hardest to take. I wonder if Lu Laoshi can subdue them and make them listen to him obediently. Upon recalling the arrangements made previously, an elder shook his head. The students in the class possessed superior talent, and on top of their high cultivation, most of them had strong backgrounds as well. Putting everything aside, their leader Mu Xueqing was the only daughter of a 2-star apothecary Mu Dan of the Apothecary Guild, and she was well doted on by him. Putting aside her high cultivation, she had many tricks up her sleeves as well. No ordinary teacher would dare to offend her. I'm afraid that it will be difficult. Those students are troublesome. Have you forgotten the teachers we sent to them before? They didn't even last for a day. Another elder flashed a bitter smile. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have to conduct a public recruitment for them. The main reason why a public recruitment was conducted during the term wasn't just because of the departure of those teachers. After all, if a teacher could take 10 students, taking 20 wasn't too much of a problem either. They could simply scatter the class and spread them out over the others, and assign a few teachers over to take them. However, the main problem was that these students refused to cooperate. Especially this class. They had sent several teachers already, but none of them lasted for more than a few days before being chased away. Furthermore, due to backgrounds of the most of them, the academy wasn't in a position to punish them too harshly as well. After a few rounds, no teachers were willing to accept them anymore. Left without a choice, they could only hire teachers from the outside. I think that there's still a chance though. Those 2 students from before, one of them had an aversion towards studying while the other one was prone to violence. These were the most difficult problems a teacher could face. Yet this Lu Laoshi easily solved them and even reprimanded the principal at that. He isn't any simple figure as well. He might really be able to subdue all of these students. This Lu Laoshi is indeed gutsy, but each of those students is a thorny one. I wonder what kind of conflicts would emerge when the two of them meet one another. Say, do you all think that they will fight? An elder suddenly asked worriedly. Everyone suddenly froze. If it was any other teacher, in fear of the teacher guild and in consideration of their identity, it would be impossible for them to lay their hands on the students. However, they couldn't say the same about that Lu Laoshi. He even dared to insult the principal, a one-star master teacher, to be blind. Not to mention, he had beaten that male student in front of their eyes. If Mu Xueqing and the others went overboard, it seemed very likely that he would get physical with them. If these students were volatile chemicals, then this Lu Laoshi must be an explosive one. Didn't you see the principal's brooding expression? He left as soon as the public recruitment came to an end. This is bad. If they were to fight, given the background of those students, it might cause a huge uproar. That's right, we have to stop them. At this, the elders' faces immediately twisted in fear. Unable to remain still, they hurriedly stood up and rushed over. If the incident of a teacher beating up a student were to occur here, then Tianwu Kingdom would surely become the laughingstock of all surrounding kingdoms. The master-teacher pavilion might even be urged into action. Realizing the graveness of the matter, the elders hurriedly rushed to Zhang Xian's classroom. It's over, look! Before even reaching the classroom, an elder wailed in agony. Hearing the shout, everyone hurriedly turned their gazes over and saw a female student kneeling motionlessly outside the classroom. Upon seeing her appearance, everyone staggered and they nearly keeled over. This was the most troublesome student in the class, Mu Xueqing. This lass had good talent, and her cultivation was high as well. She was already a handful of trouble normally, but to have her kneel at the door. Lu Laoshi, you are about to smash through the heavens. They hurried over. Xueqing, why are you kneeling outside? Hurry up and get up! An elder walked up and tried to help her up. As this elder wasn't even a master-teacher apprentice, he had to address Mu Xueqing's father as Apothecary Mu respectfully whenever he saw the other party. Upon seeing this shocking sight, how could he remain motionless? I can't! Mu Xueqing shook her head. I've done wrong, so it's only deserving for me to be punished. If I were to stand up now, Lu Laoshi will surely expel me. If so, how can I face my father? We will deal with that Lu Laoshi for you, so don't worry. They thought that she would plead with them to deal with Lu Laoshi, but never in their wildest imaginations did they expect her to say such words. Stunned, Elder Bai found the words he was about to say stuck in his mouth. With widened eyes, he asked, what did you say? It's deserving for you to be punished? You have done wrong? The other elders were stunned as well. Mu Xueqing was nicknamed the Little Demoness in the academy due to her unruliness. Yet, to be kneeling at the door and admitting her mistakes. Why did it seem so inconceivable? Indeed! After Lu Laoshi's guidance, I realized my own inadequacies, and I am willing to study under him as his student. Elders, there's no need to persuade me anymore. There was a determined look in Mu Xueqing's eyes. That Lu Laoshi was able to point out her physical problems, as well as those of other students, with a single glance. Without a doubt, he was a person of great capabilities. She had heard her father mentioning the issue of pill poison as well. It was something unavoidable when one consumed pills. Given how Lu Laoshi was able to point out her problems so easily, he might have a solution to it. It wasn't easy for her to come by such an opportunity, and such a formidable teacher. If she allowed this chance to pass her by, she would definitely regret it for life. She might be rebellious, but she wasn't a fool. Guidance? Realized your own inadequacies? Elder Bai and the others were perplexed. When did this Mu Xueqing become so obedient? If she was like from the start, she wouldn't have scared away several teachers. Elder Bai, is it possible that Lu Laoshi has already started? An elder suddenly thought of something and he paled. A shudder suddenly ran through everyone's bodies. Given that it was Lu Laoshi they were talking about, it was possible. That male student from before also changed his attitude after being beaten up. Could this Mu Xueqing be the same as well? As such a thought ran through their mind, they subconsciously turned to look at her. However, they couldn't find a single injury on her. Jia! Just when they were perplexed over the matter, the doors suddenly opened. A student walked out. It was Meng Tao. Senior, teacher has asked for you to come in. Yes. Hearing that she had obtained her teacher's permission, Mu Xueqing's eyelids leaped, and she immediately charged in excitedly without even bidding the elders farewell. It doesn't seem like she has been beaten up. Baffled by the entire situation, an elder commented. If she was beaten into submission, there should at least be some injuries on her. Even if she wasn't injured, she should harbor some resentment toward the other party. To run in excitedly the moment the teacher called for her to enter, to the point that her face was red in agitation. Who in the world could look so happy and excited after being beaten up? But, if she wasn't beaten up, why in the world would this willful lass be kneeling obediently at the door? You're called Meng Tao, right? An elder hurriedly stopped Meng Tao before he could return to the classroom. Your grandfather, Meng Fan, is a good friend of mine. We've met the other time as well. Elder Jean. Only upon hearing someone call him did Meng Tao realize that there were so many people at the doorstep. Shocked, Meng Tao's body stiffened and he hurriedly clasped his fist. This Elder Jean was a good friend of his grandfather, and they've met many times. Did Lu Laoshi inflict any physical punishment on you all? Elder Jean asked. The other elders pricked up their ears as well. Inflict physical punishment? Meng Tao was taken aback. Lu Laoshi is such an amiable person, why would he inflict physical punishment on us? Then, Mu Xueqing. Elder Jean pointed. Oh, Senior Mu did it of her own volition. Teacher got her to pack up and leave this classroom to join the other classes, but Senior was unwilling to. Thus, she kneeled outside in hope that teacher would change his mind, Meng Tao said. Of her own volition? The elders glanced at one another. Based on their previous experiences, if a teacher dared to talk to her like that, this young miss would have already rushed to the elder hall to cause a ruckus. Why was she keeping silent this time, even willingly kneeling at the door? Elders, Lu Laoshi is still in the midst of the lesson and I have to get back now. Farewell! After saying so, Meng Tao hurriedly rushed back into the classroom. Seeing that the fellow was the same as well, the elders couldn't help but open a slit in the classroom doors and peer in. Through the slit, they could see the students standing respectfully before Lu Laoshi. No matter what Lu Laoshi asked them to do, they would immediately carry it out without protesting or hesitating at all. Was this really that most unruly and troublesome class of the academy? How did it suddenly change so abruptly? Even if Lu Laoshi was capable, how long has it been since he left the elder hall? Adding it up, it was only an hour at most. In this time, he managed to whip the most rebellious students in the academy into obedience. Can anyone tell me what is going on? All of the elders felt dizzy. Chapter 326, 3 Sentences in the Classroom. Mu Xueqing was staring straight forward without blinking at all. She thought that Lu Laoshi would say something after calling her in, but he only got her to stand by in the corner while he continued to offer pointers to the other students one by one. During your cultivation, do you feel a slight blockage when your jinqi flows through your chest? Walking up to a youngster, Lu Laoshi said. Yes. The youngster was shocked to hear Lu Laoshi's words, but he still nodded. The cultivation technique you took up at the start is Tianwu fundamental formula. There isn't too much of a problem with your cultivation technique, but when you were trying to break through to the Jinqi realm, you directed your Jinqi into the wrong meridian, causing a problem to occur with your body. Am I right? That's right. The youngster clenched his fist and nodded. That was true, but it was a matter of 2 years ago, and his previous teacher had already solved this trauma for him. After which, you switched to for Tributary's true martial formula. This cultivation technique is slightly calmer than the former, and it did help to alleviate your problem. However, It doesn't solve the root of your problem, and as time went by, your hidden trauma worsened. Lu Laoshi looked at him calmly. Listen to me, switch to Eastern Blaze Art. Eastern Blaze Art? The corners of Mu Xueqing's mouth twitched. That was the most violent cultivation technique Tianwu Academy had. Even ordinary cultivators had to be careful when practicing it, fearful that it might inflict some grievous injury on them. Given that the other party had already sustained a trauma, wasn't practicing this cultivation technique no different from courting death? The youngster also realized that something was amiss, and his face distorted in distress. Rest assured, I am here. Nothing will happen to you. Lu Laoshi gestured grandly. All right. Clenching his teeth, the youngster nodded. Eastern Blaze Art couldn't be considered a valuable cultivation technique, and there was a copy in the classroom. Taking the copy, the youngster flipped through it and started cultivating. Driving his jinqi according to the formula written inside the manual, the youngster flushed and paled at intervals, as though he was suffering from irrepressible pain. Just when Mu Xueqing thought that he would fail to hold on and his cultivation would go berserk, his aura suddenly rose. Boom! The sound of jinqi exploding resounded, and the aura within the other party's body suddenly soared swiftly. A BR breakthrough? Mu Xueqing uttered with quivering lips. Unable to comprehend the sight before her, her body trembled in shock. The other students also stared at the seemingly inconceivable sight with eyes widened as though agog. As fellow peers who were together on a daily basis, they knew the situation of that youngster well. He had been stuck at his current cultivation realm for more than half a year without progressing at all. The previous teacher had tried many methods, and even Mu Xueqing had pleaded with her father for a precious pill for him, but it was all to no avail. His previous teacher said that he could only persevere and progress slowly. It would take at least 2 years before his cultivation could start to advance. In the end, just by getting him to change a cultivation technique, Lu Laoshi managed to induce a breakthrough in his cultivation. Did it have to be so exaggerated? Do you find it difficult for you to harness your strength? It is because of your jinqi. Ignoring everyone's shock, Lu Laoshi acted as though he had only done something insignificant and immediately went on to the next student. 10 minutes later, the student's aura also rose suddenly, and with a boom, he broke through his bottleneck and achieved an advancement in his cultivation realm. Pun! 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 In less than 4 hours, all of the students in the classroom had their cultivation raised significantly. This Lu Laoshi was as though an enlightened sage. With just a few words, he was able to point out the problems in their cultivation and resolve them. With a pale face, Mu Xueqing's entire body stiffened. This sight was too shocking. Those who were weak-minded would have probably gone insane on the spot. Her father was a 2-star apothecary, and due to his esteemed standing, she had met with numerous star teachers and even master teachers. But even the master teachers she met weren't so incredible as to get a person to achieve a breakthrough in their cultivation with just a few casual words. This was completely beyond her comprehension. How could he be so incredible? He is probably on par with Zhang Shi. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, at this moment, Mu Xueqing felt nothing but reverence for Lu Laoshi. When she first heard of how this teacher inflicted physical punishment on a student, she was extremely angry, and she even found herself loathing him. Yet, after seeing the other party inducing a breakthrough in each of them with just a few casual pointers, she realized that he was an extraordinarily capable teacher. He didn't pale in comparison to her idol, Master Teacher Zhang Xian. When did the academy recruit such a monster? Looking at the other students, Mu Xueqing trembled once more. The gazes they directed toward Lu Laoshi had changed as well. They were filled with admiration and respect. From the looks of it, even if she were to try to incite them to stand against him, none of them would listen to her. In less than 4 hours, he managed to surpass her position in the group's hearts. Even though this was all happening before her eyes, she couldn't help but suspect that her eyes were playing tricks on her. It's your turn. Disregarding the frenzied Mu Xueqing, Zhang Xian walked up to another youngster. This was the final student in the class, Lu Chong. He was currently at Fighter 5 Dan Dingli Realm Primary Stage. Upon seeing the teacher, the youngster didn't say anything. He simply clasped his fist and stood silently on the spot. Lu Laoshi, Lu Chong doesn't like to speak. Meng Tao hurriedly walked up. I heard that his cultivation and family background are ordinary, and it is because he kneeled at the entrance of Tianwu Academy for 7 days straight that an exception was made for him? Recalling the information provided by the academy, Zhang Xian asked. Most of the students in this class had huge backgrounds, but this Lu Chong was an exception. The part on his background and family was vague, and the only thing detailed was that he had kneeled outside for 7 days straight before his admission. Yes. Meng Tao nodded. To be able to kneel for so long to become a student of the academy, you do have the tenacity. However, cultivation isn't all about tenacity. Zhang Xian shook his head. Without a doubt, the student before him was the most stoic student in the class. However, despite having been admitted into the academy for 2 years, he had only managed to progress from Pigu Realm Primary Stage to Dingli Realm Primary Stage. The cultivation technique you are currently practicing is Frost Martial Technique, right? Zhang Xian continued looking at Lu Chong. The youngster nodded silently. Please don't blame him, Lu Laoshi. He is like that. We have been together for more than 2 years, but he hasn't spoken more than 3 sentences. Seeing how the fellow was still reluctant to talk, Meng Tao quickly explained awkwardly. Oh? He hasn't spoken more than 3 sentences in 2 years? Zhang Xian chuckled softly. I will make him speak more than 3 sentences now. Meng Tao was taken aback, and the others expressed their disbelief as well. Even Mu Xueqing couldn't help but shake his head. This Lu Chong was no different from a mute. Even her, as Tianwu Academy's famous beauty, was unable to pry his mouth open. The previous teacher also failed to make him speak as well. If not for the fact that they had heard him speak before, they would have thought that he was mute. He hadn't even spoken 3 sentences in 2 years. To make him speak more 3 sentences now? How was that possible? You all don't believe me? Sensing the crowd's disbelief, Zhang Xian asked. Then, he turned to the youngster before him and asked him as well. You don't believe me as well? Lu Chong was still silent. Fine then. Not minding it, Zhang Xian placed his hands behind his back and said, If you were to cultivate on like that, you won't even reach Pixia Realm in 10 years. At this rate you will be dead before you can exact your vengeance. Exact vengeance? Everyone was taken aback. Why did Lu Laoshi suddenly bring up exacting some vengeance? They had been with Lu Chong for 2 years, but they had never heard that he had a grudge against anyone. Just when they were perplexed over the matter, they saw the seemingly mute youngster suddenly turning pale, and his body trembled in agitation. Teacher, how did you know that my goal is to exact vengeance? You don't have to bother how I know of it. Your vengeance is both a motivation as well as a hindrance to your cultivation. You are suppressing your worries too deep within, and it has suppressed your cultivation, making it difficult for you to achieve a breakthrough. I know that the reason you refuse to speak is because you're afraid that you might accidentally speak of your enemy's name and make them aware of your existence. Zhang Xian said calmly. Don't worry, as long as you believe in me, I promise you that you will be able to exact your vengeance within 10 days. 10 days? Lu Chong found his words hard to believe. This enemy is a Tongxian realm expert. He was only at Dingli Realm Primary Stage, whereas his enemy was a Tongxian realm expert. There was a huge gap between the two, and it couldn't be covered that easily. Let alone 10 days, even 5 years would be insufficient for him to catch up. It's your choice to choose whether you want to believe me or not. However, you only get this one chance, Zhang Xian said. Conflicted, Lu Chong hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. His knees caved in and put on. He kneeled on the floor. Lu Laoshi, please guide me. It has been more than 3 sentences. Hearing the duo's conversation, everyone flew into a frenzy. Near the master-teacher pavilion, in a grand residence. Lu Shi, how long will it take before teacher finishes his 2-star master-teacher examination and returns? Valia asked. I don't know either. I've tried looking into the affair at the Master Teacher Pavilion this morning, and based on what I've got, he has already left the capital to conduct the mission, and they estimated that it would take at least 10 days. Recalling the answer from the Master Teacher Pavilion, Lu Ling replied. That is quite long. Zhao Ya's eyebrows furrowed into deep creases. 10 days isn't really long, it depends on how you look at it. How about I bring you all around Tianwu Royal City so that you all can expand your horizons? Seeing the bitter look on the faces of Zhang Xian's students, Lu Ling chuckled. Expand our horizons? Sure. Where are we going? Yuan Tao's eyes lit up. Tianwu Royal City was a city far grander than any of those in Tianxian Kingdom. He had already wanted to explore the city, and upon hearing Lu Shi's words, he could no longer hold back his excitement. Why don't I bring you all to Tianwu Academy first? That is the greatest academy in the 13 surrounding kingdoms, a sacred land for cultivators. From time to time, the master teachers from the Master Teacher Pavilion would head there to conduct lectures. It might be good for you to take a look around there. Lu Ling pondered for a moment before replying. Master teachers conduct lectures there as well? The greatest academy? Zhang sure would take a minimum of 10 days anyway. It would be good to take a look. Upon hearing that master teachers would conduct lessons there, and that it was a sacred land for cultivators, everyone was moved. Furthermore, I heard that Tianwu Academy promotes a free learning environment, so we can enter the lesson of any teacher freely without reporting in advance. It would be good for you to listen to the lectures of other teachers as well. Lu Ling smiled. All right. Hearing that they could listen in to any lessons they wanted, the crowd was excited. Thrilled, Zhao Ya and the others immediately set off for Tianwu Academy. Chapter 327. Teacher, I was wrong. Teacher, can I really exact vengeance within 10 days? In the one-to-one tutoring room, Lu Chong kneeled before Zhang Xian. Until now, he still found the situation hard to believe. Shouldering a debt of bloodshed, he had never told anyone about his burden, and he never expressed it either. In order to prevent himself from revealing it in his dreams or such, he even feigned a mute. He was confident that he had hidden it well. But this Lu Laoshi was able to conclude that he was shouldering a huge grudge just by hearing of his past affairs and his cultivation state. His capability was way too fearsome. More importantly, the other party promised him that he would be able to exact his vengeance within 10 days. His enemy was a Tongxian realm cultivator. If it was that simple, he wouldn't have to cultivate as though his life was at stake for the past 2 years. Since I have promised you as such, I have my own ways. However, my method will be excruciating, and whether you can take it or not will be up to your will. Zhang Xian looked at the youngster. He was extremely satisfied with this student of his. In order to learn under a teacher to raise his cultivation, he was willing to kneel for 7 days straight. For fear of revealing his secret, he pretended to be mute for 2 years straight. Regardless of which it was a clear sign that he had strong mental fortitude and a resolute will. His talent might not be anything much, but as long as he was groomed properly, his cultivation would definitely soar. It was just a matter of time before he surpassed Mu Xueqing. Otherwise, Zhang Xian wouldn't have said that much to him. When accepting students, he valued mental fortitude and will more than anything else. As for talent, with his capability, it didn't mean anything to him. As long as I can have my revenge, I am willing to suffer any kind of pain. Lu Chong clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were determined. All right. Placing his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian stared at him with deep eyes. There's a special occupation which none is willing to come in contact with or bring up. Have you heard of poison masters? I have. Lu Chong nodded. He had wanted to learn the art of a poison master back then, but he didn't have the connections to look for the poison hall. Teacher, could it be that? Lu Chong hesitated for a moment before asking doubtfully. Wasn't poison master a job which was looked down on by the others? Could it be that Lu Laoshi was a poison master? Or did he want to impart to him the skills of a poison master? I am not a poison master, and I won't teach you that either. Seeing through his thoughts, Zhang Xian shook his head. I have a way that can raise your strength swiftly, but it will require the use of poison. Even though it won't be detrimental to your future cultivation, you will have to suffer excruciating pain. Furthermore, if you fail to endure it, you will die. What he was referring to was the method to cultivate the poison body which he saw in the books in the poison hall. Once one managed to successfully cultivate the poison body, not only would one be immune to the toxicity of poisons, one's strength, spirit, and agility would be enhanced significantly as well, granting one significantly higher fighting prowess. Other than the Heaven's Path divine art, the only way to raise his strength immensely within the limited time he had was this. Usually, when poison masters cultivated the poison body, they would consume poison and this would affect their longevity. Back then, the reason why Gumu sustained a trauma was due to this as well. However, after the compilation of the Library of Heaven's Path, the detriments to the cultivation method had been reduced to the bare minimum. Even so, without the support of Heaven's Path Jinchi, it wouldn't be easy to cultivate it. One would have to suffer a great pain. Since Lu Chong possessed strong mental fortitude, it was worth a try. Perhaps, he might produce outstanding results. Regardless of how much pain it puts me in, as long as it allows me to exact vengeance, I am willing to give it a try. Lu Chang's eyes were filled with resolve. He only had this one opportunity. While he was cultivating, his enemy wasn't resting either. Given his talent of only a single rise in a cultivation realm every 2 years, it was impossible for him to ever surpass the other party. Since this Lu Laoshi said that he could give him the strength to exact vengeance within 10 days, he was willing to believe in the party. He had seen with his own eyes how his fellow peers grew visibly stronger under his guidance. No matter how foolish he could be, it was obvious that he was a person of great means. Seeing the resolve in the other party's eyes, Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. Then, with a deep and slightly cold voice, he warned, "The cultivation technique that I am about to impart you must not be leaked to anyone. Otherwise, even if I don't do anything, you will suffer a recoil from your Jinchi, and you will die tragically." "Yes." Lu Chong nodded. Raising a hand, he swore, "I, Lu Chong, swear to never impart the cultivation technique and secret arts Lu Laoshi impart me to anyone else, and if I were to break my vow, may my soul dissipate." "On!" Zhang Xian tapped on an acupoint on Lu Chong's body and discreetly sent a surge of Jinchi into his body. The cultivation technique he was imparting to the other party was too powerful. If it were to leak out, it would bring trouble to him, as well as the world. Even though the other party had sworn to it, he himself needed to prepare a countermeasure as well. After his study and research of poison, his Heaven's Path Jinchi was capable of turning into a tonic or a poison with a single thought. If the other party were to seal his mouth tightly, this surge of Jinchi would clear away all of the obstacles lying in his meridians and raise his cultivation. However, if he were to abuse his strength, this surge of Jinchi could also have him killed in an instant. Cultivating the poison body requires the complementation of poison. I don't have such medicinal herbs on me at the moment, so I will impart the cultivation technique to you tomorrow. However, I will teach you another technique that can strengthen your physical body. You should learn it well, as a strong physical body is required to withstand the lethal poison." After making preparations, Zhang Xian looked him in the eye and said, "I will only recite the cultivation formula once. How much you remember and understand will depend on your ability. Don't let me down." "I won't let teacher down." Lu Chong nodded. "Very well, this physical body enhancement technique." Zhang Xian started explaining. The technique he was referring to was the Heaven's Path Golden Body. Of course, he imparted the simplified version, which he imparted to Zhao Ye and the others as well. Cultivating the poison body required one's body to come into contact with lethal poison. If one's body wasn't strong enough, it would be hard for one to hold on. Even though this Heaven's Path Golden Body was inferior to the one which Zhang Xian cultivated, it was still a product of the Library of Heaven's Path, and it mustn't be underestimated. As long as one cultivated it seriously, it wouldn't be a problem for one to grow stronger swiftly. And this is what we call a complete body. Soon, Zhang Xian finished reciting the cultivation formula. Teacher, thank you for your bestowment. After hearing the formula of the technique, Lu Chang's body trembled and his face flushed in agitation. Having studied in Tianwu Academy for 2 years, he had seen quite a few cultivation techniques, and he also knew of a few physical body enhancement technique formulas. Compared to the one which Lu Laoshi had just taught him, they were all trash. At the very least, this technique was at Phantom Pinnacle or above. If Lu Laoshi were to auction it, it would definitely fetch an astronomical sum. Even the Tianwu royal family would go in a frenzy for it. It was such a valuable technique, yet Lu Laoshi taught it to him without asking for anything. This was a huge debt which he would never be able to repay. You should start cultivating. Ignoring the other party's agitation, Zhang Xian waved his hands casually. Yes. Knowing that teacher didn't like to waste his words, Lu Chong hurriedly sat on the floor and started cultivating. Following the Heaven's Path Golden Body's formula, Lu Chong drove his Jinqi on a specific path in his body, and after a moment, he felt an extremely comfortable and relaxing sensation gush through his body. All of the traumas he had sustained before instantaneously disappeared. Incredible! After an unknown period of time, a cracking sound echoed in the muscles throughout Lu Chong's body, and his strength rose significantly. Who? Lu Chong opened his eyes. At this moment, he felt as though he harnessed boundless strength in his body. Not bad. You managed to achieve minor accomplishment within 2 hours. This shows that you have a good foundation. Zhang Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. For revenge, the other party was willing to take all kind of pain, so he must have trained his body for this goal as well. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to reach minor accomplishment for the simplified version of Heaven's Path Golden Body within 2 hours. You can go out now. Your other classmates are probably anxious for you. After he was done with the cultivating the physical body enhancement technique, Zhang Xian pushed the door and walked out. It had been more than 2 hours since the duo entered, and the students outside were probably anxious from waiting already. In the classroom, Lu Laoshi said that he would grant Lu Chong the strength to defeat a Tongxian realm expert within 10 days. Do you think that it is possible? Until now, that student was unable to believe it. I don't know either. However, judging from how Lu Laoshi was able to help us achieve breakthroughs in our cultivation just by giving us a few casual pointers, I doubt that his discernment is inferior to that of a master teacher. I have heard the lessons of a master teacher before, and it is only slightly deeper than the lecture of our previous teacher. Compared to Lu Laoshi, I think that their lessons are lacking. Indeed, is he really just an ordinary teacher? Discussions sounded in the classroom. Initially, they harbored deep hostility toward this teacher. However, the moment he started guiding them, everyone immediately realized that they had met with a good teacher and fell to his side. At Tongxian Realm, one's strength exceeds 100 ding, granting them the might to easily split open a tree. Lu Chong is currently only at Dingli Realm primary stage, and that is 2 whole realms away from Tongxian Realm. How can he possibly reach Tongxian Realm in 10 days under such conditions? Mu Xueqing shook her head. She was at Pixue Realm, and she knew how difficult it was to raise one's cultivation. It would already be incredible if Lu Chong could reach Dingli Realm intermediate stage within 10 days. To advance 2 whole realms and match a Tongxian Realm expert. To her, it sounded no different from boasting. Indeed. Meng Tao nodded as well. Back then, it took him an entire year of effort to advance from Dingli Realm primary stage to advanced stage. To reach Tongxian Realm within 10 days. He didn't think that it was possible either. Jia! Just when they were discussing, the door suddenly opened and Lu Laoshi and Lu Chong walked out. At this moment, Lu Chong looked spirited, and his eyes were filled with energy. Explosive power could be felt from his body, and it felt like the mighty waves in the ocean, exerting great pressure on the one looking at him. Dingli Realm, Pinnacle? Upon sensing his aura, Mu Xueqing and Meng Tao fell silent. Their eyes grew so wide that they were about to pop out from their eyes. How long had it been since he entered the room with Lu Laoshi? To advance from Dingli Realm primary stage to Pinnacle in 2 hours. The duo felt like spurting blood. Compared to him, their cultivation speed was no different from a snail's. It took them several months before they could see a slight progress in their cultivation, yet Lu Laoshi simply brought Lu Chong in for just a while, and he had already broken through 2 smaller realms. Did it have to be that exaggerated? Furthermore, they were oblivious to the fact that Lu Chong's simplified Heaven's Path Golden Path had granted him the strength exceeding that of an ordinary Dingli realm pinnacle. Adding his physical strength along with that of his Jinqi, he possessed an astounding might of 5 Ding. An ordinary Dingli realm pinnacle could only wield a might of 4 Ding. This is too incredible. Senior, I think it is best that you admit your mistake. It is impossible to find such an incredible teacher anywhere else. Suppressing his shock, Meng Tao hurriedly sent a telepathic message to Meng Tao. Halfway through his words, Meng Tao realized that the other party wasn't responding. Thinking that his senior's proud nature was acting up again, he hurriedly turned around to persuade her, but the unexpected sight before him nearly caused him to faint. Put on! The incomparably arrogant little demoness Mu Xueqing, who would never admit her mistakes, was already kneeling before Lu Laoshi with an earnest expression on her face. Teacher, I am in the wrong. Please forgive me. I will do whatever you ask of me in the future. I won't disobey you ever again. Even if that genius master teacher Zhang Xian were to come over, I will disregard him as though he is just mere air. Zhang Xian. Chapter 328, Brawl of the Two Ladies. Stand up! Even though he felt dismayed at Mu Xueqing's words, Zhang Xian walked over to help her up. He didn't intend to quarrel with a student over this affair. The only reason why he threatened her with expulsion was to warn her so that she would listen obediently in the future. Due to her consumption of pills from young, the pill poison had already permeated deep into her body, blocking her meridians tightly like shackles. He needed her unreserved trust to clear away the impurities in her meridians. Thus, he intentionally gave her the cold shoulders so that she could think it through and cherish this opportunity. If she was willing to grasp this opportunity, Zhang Xian didn't mind saving her. However, if she decided to remain obstinate, Zhang Xian didn't think of it as a huge loss either. At worst, he would just lose a student. If he wanted, he could easily groom students with cultivation surpassing hers within 10 days. Even though there is poison in the pills, it isn't a severe problem. Otherwise, the standing of alchemists won't be that high there. Zhang Xian explained. Your cultivation method has the effect of swiftly propelling the medicinal energy through your body, allowing it to take effect swiftly. However, at the same time, it also causes the pill poison to be absorbed into your body swiftly as well, thus causing your condition to become so severe. Over the years, the pill poison accumulated in your meridians, making it difficult to expel it. Write down your cultivation technique. I will modify it for you. As long as you cultivate according to it, the pill poison that has sunk into your body should be expelled in less than 10 days and you will experience a rise in your cultivation as well. Pill poison was a difficult problem for even a 4-star master teacher. However, given that Zhang Xian had cultivated the Heaven's Path divine art, the cultivation technique closest to perfection, it wasn't too difficult for him to solve it. Yes. Not daring to hesitate, Mu Xueqing quickly copied down her cultivation technique on a piece of paper. After taking a look at it, he did a few modifications before passing the paper back to her and instructing her to cultivate according to it. An hour later, Mu Xueqing felt a refreshing sensation gushing through her body. The shackles which seemed to be binding her body before seemed to have been released, and a relaxing feeling surged to embrace her body from within. In fact, she even managed to achieve a small breakthrough in her cultivation, opening up another acupoint. Sensing the change in her body, Mu Xueqing finally understood how incredible this Lu Laoshi was. Instantaneously, she was filled with gratitude for him. All right, we'll end the lesson here. You all may leave now. After settling Mu Xueqing's issue, Zhang Xian casually waved his hands. The crowd nodded and left the classroom. Leaving the classroom, the group could no longer suppress the excitement in their hearts. Lu Laoshi is simply too formidable. After his guidance, I realized that my cultivation method was entirely wrong. If I were to cultivate according to his instructions, I will surely be able to reach Dingli Realm in less than 3 months. It's the same for me as well. After cultivating according to the formula teacher gave me, I feel relaxed all over, and my strength is also progressing swiftly. I didn't expect that a problem I didn't think much of would weigh me down so much. This is what a truly incredible teacher is like. Did you notice that we actually know about the things he had pointed out, but we have never thought of putting them together? I thought that the academy would send another mediocre teacher over, but to think that Lu Laoshi would be this formidable. Everyone's eyes were glowing. Even though it hadn't been long since they met with their new teacher, they were already completely amazed by him. To be able to raise our cultivation with just a few casual pointers, even master teachers might not possess such capability. Hearing the group's discussion, Meng Tao couldn't help but add in. Indeed. I've had the honor of meeting with several master teachers, and I even once obtained Pavilion Master Zhang's tutelage jade token and listened to 2 hours of his lecture. His lecture was impressive, but he was still lacking compared to Lu Laoshi's precise guidance. Mu Xueqing nodded. Due to her family background, she had come into contact with numerous master teachers from young, to the point that she had even listened to Pavilion Master Zhang's lesson before. However, his guidance wasn't as spot-on as Lu Laoshi's, the latter pointing straight to the crux of the problem and allowing one to improve immensely once they corrected it. Even Pavilion Master Zhang's lesson is lacking compared to his? Does this mean that our Lu Laoshi's teaching ability is already above that of a 2-star master teacher? Meng Tao asked in disbelief. Not only Pavilion Master Jiang, I think that the genius master teacher Zhang Xian also pales in comparison to him. He only managed to cause a huge uproar in the master-teacher examination due to his talent. The cultivation of his students aren't anything much. Based on what I've heard, they are all at Dingli Realm, and even the strongest of them was only at Pixue Realm. Mu Xueqing continued. If he was really as proficient in teaching as Lu Laoshi, how could his students be so weak? With a new idol, Mu Xueqing was no longer blinded in her reverence for the genius master teacher. Recalling the news she had heard, she made a comparison between Zhang Xian and Lu Laoshi, and arrived at this conclusion. Master teacher Zhang Xian was a talented individual, but in terms of teaching, it was impossible for him to match up to Lu Laoshi. Otherwise, how could his direct disciples be so weak? One had to know that Lu Laoshi had claimed that he could make Lu Chong defeat a Tongxian realm expert within 10 days. Regardless of how short the duration when master teacher Zhang Xian's students had been with him, it was definitely more than 10 days. It was clear who was the superior one. Who did you say was mediocre in teaching? I dare you to repeat your words. Mu Xueqing had just finished speaking her piece when a cold voice sounded out behind them. Turning around, they saw an incredibly beautiful lady who was around Mu Xueqing's age standing in the distance. Her eyebrows were knitted tightly together in displeasure. Upon seeing this lady, Mu Xueqing, who always prided herself on her looks, couldn't help but gasp in admiration. However, envy soon welled up in her. What business of yours is it whomever I speak of? Mu Xueqing harumphed coldly. She was the little demoness who feared nothing at all. She might have become an obedient lamb facing Lu Laoshi's authority. But if a random stranger thought that she could climb over her head, then she must be dreaming. Did you just say that master teacher Zhang Xian is mediocre in teaching, and his students are weak? The beautiful lady opposite to her stared at her with eyes burning with fury. Why? Have I said anything wrong? There is nothing to be said about Zhang Shu's talents, but the students he taught are truly ordinary. Just by looking at their cultivation, one can tell that his teaching abilities are subpar. Mu Xueqing was a person who favored the carrot over the stick. Even though she revered Zhang Shu a lot, she couldn't help but retaliate verbally upon sensing the threat the lady's voice. Since you said so, let's not waste any words. Do you dare to duel with me? The lady's face steeled and she gritted her silver teeth. Duel with you? Mu Xueqing was taken aback. She must be sick. She only casually said that master teacher Zhang Xian's lessons couldn't compare up to Lu Laoshi's, yet this lass was acting as though she had killed her entire family. What in the world was she up to? However, as the little demoness and one of the top students in the entire Tianwu kingdom, she couldn't back down a duel. Let's fight then. Do you think that I will be scared of you? Harumphing coldly, Mu Xueqing flung her sleeve. Senior! Seeing the little demoness flying to a rage, Meng Tao and the others were shocked. They hurriedly tried to stop her. On the other hand, another lady beside the beautiful lady looked a little worried as well. Zhao Ye, Lu Shi told us not to cause any trouble, the female said feebly, worried that they would get into trouble. Wang Ying, they have already insulted our teacher, are we to tolerate it? A young man stepped forward. With a flick of his wrist, he whipped out the spear behind his back, and the joints of the spear started fixing itself together. Indeed, we can't tolerate it. They have insulted our teacher and us. So what if this is Tianwu Academy? A plump-faced fatty stepped forward. They were Zhao Ye, Xingyang, and the others who came to Tianwu Academy for a leisurely stroll. They had been walking around Tianwu Academy, and the grandeur of the top academy of the 13 surrounding kingdoms had indeed left them stunned. After walking for an entire afternoon, just as they were about to return, they heard someone insult Zhang Laoshi. How could they watch by the side as the respected figure in their hearts was being sullied? They could tolerate being insulted themselves, but they couldn't allow anyone to insult Zhang Laoshi. In their hearts, Zhang Laoshi was an existence equivalent to a god. What Lu Laoshi and Jiang Qin, all of those meant nothing to them at all. Seeing Xingyang and Yuan Tao fervently supporting Zhao Ye's decision, Wang Ying hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. All right. Zhang Xian's 5 students always had a fearless personality. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to challenge Lu Sun publicly during the teacher evaluation. Even though they were at Tianwu Academy, and they had no connections or backing here, they couldn't forgive the fact that someone had dared to insult their teacher. There is a sparring ring right in front. Whoever loses must apologize to the other party. Zhao Ye's pitch-black hair flew in the air, and in an instant, she felt as though a pure and valiant goddess. Do you dare to accept the challenge? What is there to fear? Rather, I'm afraid that you will go back on your words when you lose. Mu Xueqing didn't back down at all. Then cut the crap, let's go! Zhao Ye couldn't be bothered to argue with the other party, and she began to walk toward the dueling ring. As an academy for cultivators, Tianwu Academy had average-sized sparring rings throughout the entire campus to allow students to spar with one another and raise their cultivation. What's wrong? It seems like little demoness Mu Xueqing is sparring with someone. Sparring with someone? Who would be so daring as to fight with her? Zhao Wuxing? Or is it Lu Changyan? It isn't them. I haven't seen the other party before either. It is an extremely beautiful lady, so beautiful that I couldn't believe my eyes. The battle between 2 beauties? I have to take a look then. Sensing the strong smell of gunpowder between the duo, the other students, who were walking leisurely around the campus, were immediately roused and innumerable people gathered around the sparring ring. Mu Xueqing was both beautiful and strong, and she had always been in the center of attention in the academy. Not to mention, the lady she was facing was even more beautiful than her. In an instant, the attention of the entire academy was focused on this duel. Large circles of crowd gathered around the sparring ring. She's indeed beautiful. Why haven't I met her before? She must be new. Otherwise, given her beauty, it is impossible for me to not have heard of her. Upon seeing Zhao Ye, the eyes of the student population lit up. After triggering her purine body, her disposition and appearance became refined, and she stood out from the typical ladies. In an instant, she attracted everyone's gazes, and the eyes of many male students were glowing. Damn it! Seeing those male students directing furious glares at her, Mu Xueqing's face steeled, and she was about to explode with fury. In the past, regardless of where she went, she was the center of attention. But at this moment, her spotlight was being stolen by some other lady. How could she take this lying down? If I don't leave your smash your head until you even forget your own name, I'll forsake my surname. Clenching her jaws forcefully, Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. Chapter 329, Dual Agreement. Zhao Ye, Even though there isn't much to be said about the other party's character, she isn't weak. You must be careful. Xingyang stepped forward and told Zhao Ye with a hushed voice. Don't worry, Zhao Ye responded. After Zhang Laosher's guidance yesterday, she opened up another 10 acupoints. Even though the lady before her wasn't weak, she could only be considered to be on par with her. When it comes down to it, it was hard to say who would lose. Who? Leaping forward, Zhao Ye landed lightly on the sparring ring. Staring at Mu Xueqing with her black beady eyes, she gestured with her hands and said, Let's begin. Humph. Refusing to back down, Mu Xueqing leaped onto the sparring ring as well. She unleashed her might, which had just risen from her breakthrough just a moment ago, and strength gushed through her as though a flowing river. It's beginning! The battle between the two beauties. Seeing the two beauties facing each other on the sparring ring, the crowd immediately fell silent, fearful that they would interrupt their concentration. I will make you apologize! With a clear thud, Zhao Ye pushed against the floor and charged forth. At the same time, a howling aura which bore some reminiscence to the gleam of a sword shrouded her arms. The one to apologize will be you. Refusing to yield, Mu Xueqing also charged forward. Pum. Soon, the duo had already traded blows several times. As Pixia realm cultivators, the might of their blows caused a violent sonic boom to burst in the air. Incredible! Where did this lady come from? Despite her young age, she is actually able to match Mu Xueqing. Amidst the crowd, a young man looked at the battle with a perplexed expression. It was the student who was ranked first in the student tournament, Zhao Wuxing. I have no idea as well. It seemed as though she suddenly appeared today. Beside him, another person looked at the stage with a doubtful expression as well. If Mu Xueqing saw this person, she would definitely recognize him as the one who was placed second in the student tournament, Lu Changyan. Despite being the two most famous students in the academy, Zhao Wuxing and Lu Changyan couldn't hold back their curiosity to spectate the battle. Who do you think will win? After looking for a moment longer, Lu Changyan chuckled. In just a few days, Mu Xueqing's cultivation has improved, and the restraint in her movements has also disappeared, causing her fighting prowess to soar greatly. Even though the lady she is facing is using inferior battle techniques, her movements were forceful. Furthermore, there seems to be some kind of frosty aura to her moves, making it difficult for one to face it head-on. I can't really say for sure who will win. After hesitating for a moment, Zhao Wuxing said. As the number one student in the entire academy, his eye for such matters was astonishing. However, regardless of whether it was their cultivation or their means, the two ladies on the sparring ring seemed to be on the same level. He couldn't say for sure who would win either. Lu Changyan nodded in agreement. Then, he suddenly frowned. That lady who abruptly appeared has a strong foundation, but why are her battle techniques so weak? All of the moves she has used were at intermediate tier mortal or so. If her battle techniques were slightly more advanced, she might have won already. Indeed! Zhao Wuxing was also perplexed by the sight. These two beautiful ladies had both reached Pixia realm. As long as they wished, they could easily access the high-tier or even pinnacle mortal battle techniques. To still be using intermediate-tier mortal at her cultivation realm, that was indeed a little lacking. If not for the frosty aura in her body limiting the other party's movements, rendering Mu Xueqing unable to gain on her, she would have already lost. This isn't good. Xingyang and the others could also see the problem. Zhao Ye's purine body granted her a huge advantage against cultivators of the same cultivation realm. However, as the battle techniques she knew were still limited to the level of Tianxian Kingdom, there was still a huge distance between both parties. More importantly, it had only been 2 months since Zhao Ye advanced from Fighter 1 Danjushi realm to Pixia realm. The rapid rise in her cultivation caused her to lack actual combat experience. On the other hand, as the little demoness who had caused innumerable storms in Tianwu Academy, Mu Xueqing had plenty of battle experience. Lacking battle techniques and battle experience. If not for her overwhelmingly powerful physical constitution and her powerful Jinqi, she would have already lost by now. Don't panic. Even though Zhao Ye is lacking in practical battle experience, it isn't that easy for the other party to triumph over her, Lu Yang said. Back then, Zhao Ye's physical constitution could even suppress Lu Sun Laoshi. No matter how powerful this lady was, could she be stronger than Lu Sun? Don't worry. Once she gets used to the tempo of the battle, it will just be a matter of time before she defeats the other party. Zhao Ye's disadvantage was due to her lacking battle experience. As the battle continued on, Zhao Ye would slowly get used to the flow of the fight, and by then, it wouldn't be difficult for her to defeat the other party. Damn it! Since the crowd below was able to realize this, naturally Mu Xueqing could notice it as well, and her face steeled. Even though she wasn't the strongest female in her age group in Tianwu Kingdom, she wasn't too far from it. She thought that it should have been easy for her to teach a lass younger than her a lesson, but never in her dreams did she expect for the other party to be this formidable. When did such an incredible freshman appear in Tianwu Academy? If this continues to drag on, given how condensed her Xingqi is, I will surely lose. I have no choice but to use that technique. Mu Xueqing gritted her teeth, and a ferocious glint appeared in her eyes. Even though the other party was in a disadvantageous position at first, as time went by, she found the tables being slowly turned on her. In the end, her cultivation was forcefully pulled by pills, so her Xingqi was still a little thin. Humph! Harumphing lightly, Mu Xueqing frowned. Her aura suddenly surged, and she released a forceful punch. It's Apothecary Mu's Fallen Flower Fist! A grim look appeared on Zhao Wuxing's face. Fallen Flower Fist? Lu Changyan turned to Zhao Wuxing and asked. Indeed. It's a high-tier phantom battle technique. It's said that when Apothecary Mu reached Songsha realm, in remembrance of his dead wife, he created this technique. There is a total of 3 moves to this technique, and every single one has overwhelming strength. Even Enmo Hongyi was filled with praises for it. Zhao Wuxing stared at the lady on stage and commented. To think that Apothecary Mu would pass this technique on to his daughter, and that she would have already mastered the first move. High-tier phantom battle technique? Techniques of such level are rare even in the capital. The other lady Mu Xueqing is facing is in trouble. Amazed, Lu Changyan nodded his head. Even in Tianwu Kingdom, a high-tier phantom battle technique was considered to be top-notch. On top of that, the other lady was lacking in good battle techniques, making it difficult for her to withstand this move. As they expected, facing the savage pressure from the other party, Zhao Ye's face warped in shock. I have to go all out. Gritting her silver teeth, she knew that she would definitely fall in defeat if she were to continue executing normal moves. Thus, with a bellow, she pumped her Xingqi furiously through her veins. She was putting her all into this single move. Pun! The fallen flower fist met her palm. Dang 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 dang. The duo's faces reddened, and they retreated 7 to 8 steps consecutively before fresh blood spurted from their mouths. It was a draw. Zhao Ye! Senior! Jin Yang and Meng Tao dashed up to the stage. Seems like I have underestimated you. It is a draw today, but do you dare to fight against me 3 days from now? Flinging her arms, Mu Xueqing pushed Meng Tao and the others aside before glaring at Zhao Ye coldly. So be it. If you lose at that time, you have to apologize. Zhao Ye stared back at her as well. Apologize? I only said that Changsha isn't good at teaching. What business of it is yours? At this, Mu Xueqing suddenly realized something and she froze. It can't be that. You all are Changsha's students? That's right. He is our teacher. Your action of insulting him is equivalent to insulting all of us. Zhao Ye replied. I see. Finally understanding the reason why the other party was so furious as to challenge her to a duel, Mu Xueqing shook her head. I am also filled with respect for Changsha, just that. I am being objective here. In terms of teaching, I can guarantee that our Lu Laoshi is definitely superior to your Changsha. Lu Laoshi? I've never heard of him. Zhao Ye shook her head. Then, with a proud look, she declared, Our Zhang Laoshi is definitely the best in teaching. No one is able to match up to him. You! Mu Xueqing gritted her teeth. Since none of us is willing to concede, then let our fists do the talking. Let's meet again 3 days from now on, and whoever loses has to admit that their teacher is inferior to the other party's teacher. Do you dare to accept my challenge? Why wouldn't I dare to accept your challenge? Zhao nodded. Fine, it's a deal then. Let's go. Seeing that the other party had agreed to it, Mu Xueqing flung her arms, turned around and left. It hadn't been long since she came into contact with Lu Laoshi, but she felt grateful to the other party for solving the trauma in the body and raising her cultivation. Given that a student of Zhang Shi was challenging his prestige, she felt a need to guard his honor. She wanted to let people know that even though Lu Laoshi wasn't a master teacher, he was in no way inferior to a master teacher. Let's go! Zhao Ye also left with Wang Ying and the others. These few people are Zhang Shi's students? This is a huge affair. I've heard of Zhang Shi. He's the genius who broke all of Genius Mo Hongyi's records, taking over his position as the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom. No wonder that lady was so incredible, she is his student. Upon learning that Zhao Ye and the others were Zhang Shi's students, the crowd below broke into a commotion. Those students who harbored ideas on Zhao Ye immediately vanquished all of their thoughts. Master teacher Zhang Xian was a rising figure in the city, and many influential powers were eager to build a connection with him. Laying hands on his students was no different than suicide. Right, isn't Mu Xueqing's teacher Bai Fan Laoshi? Who is Lu Laoshi? You still don't know about it. Bai Fang Laoshi has already left the academy, and this Lu Laoshi is a teacher who was just recruited today. Just recruited today? That's right. I was in charge of attending to the interviewees, so I personally saw the scene back then. That Lu Laoshi is indeed a capable teacher. The student recounted the events during the public recruitment. With a single word, he fixed the student's aversion to studying, and with a beating, he fixed the student's violent tendencies. You must be joking. There's actually such a person in the world? After hearing those words, the crowd was dumbfounded. They couldn't help but doubt that the other party was lying to them. It's true, the student said indignantly. You all know Mu Xueqing's personality as well. If it's not true, how could she be willing to fight with another person for him when she has only come into contact with him for such a short period of time? Now that you speak of it, I suddenly thought of something. When I met the students in their class this morning, their cultivation didn't seem to be that high yet. How in the world was all of their cultivation raised in just a few hours? Could this really be due to Lu Laoshi's guidance? For him to be so formidable, who in the world is this Lu Laoshi? The more the crowd discussed, the more curious they were about Mu Xueqing's new teacher. Ah Chu! After leaving the classroom, just as Zhang Xian was walking on a pavement, he suddenly sneezed. Perplexed, he rubbed his nose. What's wrong? Did I catch a cold? Chapter 330. Physician Guild. Not long after Mu Xueqing and the others stepped out of the classroom, Zhang Xian left as well. To raise Lu Chang's cultivation in the shortest time possible, he had to purchase sufficient medicinal herbs to concoct the poison. It was impossible for him to obtain these herbs just by waiting in the academy. There are only 2 sources where one can obtain medicinal herbs: the Herb Kings and the Physician Guild. Zhang Xian contemplated as he proceeded forward. Herb Kings referred to wholesaler of medicinal herbs, and the Great Herb King of the Red Lotus City was the largest wholesaler in the 13 surrounding kingdoms. If Tianwu Royal City has a Herb King, Bai Chan and the others wouldn't have to go through so much effort to travel to Red Lotus City to purchase medicine. I'd better head to the Physician Guild. Given how Bai Chan and the other physicians traveled all the way to Red Lotus City to purchase medicinal herbs, it was clear that there was no Herb King in Tianwu Royal City. Even if there was, it was unlikely for him to have a wide variety of herbs. Since that was the case, Zhang Xian decided to head for the Physician Guild straight. The Apothecary Guild and the Physician Guild both expended huge quantities of herbs on a daily basis. The pills the former forged were mostly related to raising one's cultivation, and thus, the medicinal herbs they possessed were mostly tonics and spirit medicinal herbs. On the other hand, the latter concocted medicine with the purpose of saving and treating others, and poisonous herbs frequently appeared in their prescriptions. Therefore, it was more likely that latter would possess the poisonous herbs that Zhang Xian was looking for. After asking around in the academy, Zhang Xian soon found out where the physician guild was located. It wasn't too far from Tianwu Academy, and he arrived at its doorstep within an hour. The physician guild wasn't as grand as the master-teacher pavilion, but still, it was larger and more imposing than the painter guild. Upon walking into the lounge, Zhang Xian immediately saw a group of people lining up neatly within. There were apprentices seated at the front diagnosing the patient. It was quite similar to the hospitals in his previous life. Walking around the crowd, Zhang Xian walked up to the reception and a young lady in her 20s walked up to welcome him with a sweet smile. "May I know what Gongzi hopes to inquire?" "I wish to buy some medicinal herbs," Zhang Xian said. "You wish to buy some herbs?" The lady hesitated for a moment before asking politely. "Can you show me your prescription?" "Prescription?" He was just here to buy medicinal herbs, so how could he possibly have something like that? "You can only buy medicinal herbs with a prescription." Seeing the confused look on the other party's face, the lady frowned. "Where can I obtain a prescription?" Zhang Xian asked. "Physicians and apprentices have the right to issue a prescription." The lady looked at Zhang Xian with a bizarre gaze. "However, apprentices can only issue prescriptions consisting of low-tier medicinal herbs. If you wish to purchase high-tier medicinal herbs, you will have to look for a physician. To dare to come up here to buy medicinal herbs when you don't even know where to get a prescription from. It is fortunate for you that my temper is good, otherwise you would have already been kicked out as a troublemaker." "Oh, the medicinal herbs I want to buy can't be considered as high-tier, but they are still quite rare. I will recite them for you, so can you tell me whether I should look for an apprentice or a physician to issue a prescription?" Seeing the long queue before the apprentices and a longer one before the physicians, Zhang Xian decided to clarify everything properly before deciding on a course of action. He didn't want to leave in disappointment after lining up for several hours at the apprentice queue only to realize that the other party was unable to issue the prescription. "All right." The lady nodded. "I want to buy white angelica flower, crimson edge leaf, wolf venom grass." After pondering for a moment, Zhang Xian listed out over a dozen medicinal herbs. Before he could finish his words, the lady's eyes widened into large circles. Alarmed, she took a step back and knocked a bronze gong. "Guards, someone is causing trouble." Zhang Xian. "Walala!" A few armored guards rushed over. "Yaro Xiaojie, what's wrong?" The guard leader was a tall and bulky man. With a physique as though a steel tower, his presence exerted a huge pressure on those around him. Tongxian realm expert. "That man is causing trouble." Receptionist Yaro pointed. Cough cough. Zhang Xian didn't expect that he would be taken for a troublemaker when he only intended to purchase medicine. Shaking his head, he said, "I am a teacher of Tianwu Academy. I am really here to buy medicinal herbs." After which, he flashed an emblem indicating his identity as a teacher. He didn't want to be thrown out from the guild despite having only entered a moment ago. "Oh, so it's Lu Laoshi. Pardon our disrespect." After taking a glance at the emblem, the guard leader clasped his fist. He then turned to Yaro and asked doubtfully, "What is going on?" Tianwu Academy was known as the sacred land for cultivators, and the teachers possessed immense prestige in the capital. No one dared to look down on them. Since the other party was a teacher, it was unlikely that he would cause trouble here given his esteemed standing. Despite not having a prescription, he said that he wanted to buy prohibited medicinal herbs like white angelica flower, crimson edge leaf, and wolf venom grass. If this isn't causing trouble, what else is? Not expecting that this ignorant fellow to be a teacher of Tianwu Academy, Yaro was taken aback for a moment. However, she soon recovered and explained the situation. Buying prohibited medicinal herbs? After hearing the reason, the guard leader turned to Zhang Xian. "Lu Laoshi, medicinal herbs like the wolf venom grass possess lethal poison, and thus, the guild deems them as prohibited herbs. Even with a prescription, we aren't allowed to sell them to you. Unless a physician vouches for you personally, otherwise it will be impossible to purchase those herbs. I'm unable to purchase those herbs even with a prescription. Yes. These prohibited medicinal herbs possess lethal poison, and in order to prevent people from abusing these medicinal herbs to conduct vile deeds, the guild decided to impose strict rules on their distribution. I seek your understanding on this matter. The guard clasped his fist and explained respectfully. If not for the fact that the other party was a teacher of Tianwu Academy, he would have thought that he was here to cause trouble as well. Despite knowing nothing at all, to head to the guild to purchase prohibited medicinal herbs. He sure was brazen. Oh. Zhang Xian nodded. He could understand the rationale behind their actions. In his previous life, some of the more potent medicine, such as sleeping pills, weren't available to the general public even with a prescription. They were simply trying to prevent widespread use of these lethal medicinal herbs, which could potentially cause unrest in the city. Since Lu Laoshi understands this matter, I have to ask you to leave and not make things difficult for us. Seeing that the other party comprehended their plight, the guard leader continued. However, before he could finish his words, the young man before him knitted his eyebrows tightly together. With a helpless expression, the other party shook his head. Seems like I have to try taking the physician examination then. Sigh, to think that even purchasing medicinal herbs would be such a hassle. Taking the physician examination? Purchasing medicinal herbs would be such a hassle? Upon hearing those words, Yarou and the guards nearly keeled over. Physician was one of the higher-ranked occupations of the upper 9 paths. As such, the difficulty of the examination was extraordinary. Despite not even being an apprentice, not to mention how you didn't even know that a prescription was required to purchase medicinal herbs, how could you boast so arrogantly that you are going to take the physician examination? Furthermore, for you to do so just to purchase medicinal herbs. Brother, will you die if you act a little humbler? Yarou's complexion immediately turned awful. She had seen many braggarts before, but she had never seen one who was capable of bragging to the stars. Even if you don't know that a prescription is required to purchase medicinal herbs, you should at least know that taking the physician examination requires an in-depth knowledge of medicinal herbs. To not even know that the white angelica flower, crimson-edged leaf, and wolf venom grass are prohibited medicinal herbs, and you still wish to take the physician examination? You must be joking. Lu Laoshi, the physician examination isn't as easy as you think. The guard leader was infuriated by how lightly the other party was taking the occupation, but in consideration of his identity as a teacher of Tianwu Academy, he suppressed his anger and tried to explain the matter to him. I understand. How can becoming a member of an occupation of the upper 9 paths be easy? Zhang Xian nodded. Hearing the other party's words, the guard leader nodded, thinking that the other party had given up on the idea. However, upon hearing the words that followed behind it, he staggered and nearly spurted blood. The young man looked at him with a serious face and asked, So, may I know where the physician examination is held? To not even know where the physician examination is held, and you still want to take the examination? It's at the physician hall over there. The guard leader was seething with rage, but he still managed to hold himself back. Pointing to the front, he replied with a trembling voice. Looking toward where the other party's finger was pointed, Zhang Xian saw a huge hall, and a plaque placed on top of the entrance that wrote Physician Hall. All right, thank you. May I trouble you to prepare the medicinal herbs that I just spoke of? I will come and claim them after I'm done with the physician examination. Upon knowing the location, Zhang Xian instructed the receptionist, Yarou, before heading over. Braggart. Upon seeing the other party leave, Yarou could no longer hold herself back and harumphed with clear disdain in her voice. She was already absolutely certain that this fellow was here to wreak havoc. Otherwise, who would attempt the physician examination despite knowing nothing at all? He does seem somewhat unreliable. Given the prestige associated with being a physician, how can it possible for anyone to pass the examination that easily? The guard leader shook his head as well. It is one thing if you have studied the way of medicine before, but to not even know where the physician examination is held and that a prescription is required to purchase medicinal herbs, it can't be clearer to see that you are a newbie. And yet you still want to take the examination. Aren't you underestimating this occupation a little way too much? That may not necessarily be so. I recall that there's a person in our guild who managed to pass the 1-star physician examination despite not being an apprentice. A guard spoke up. Oh, you're speaking of 3-star physician Mu Hong? He is an exception. Having come from a lineage of physicians, he has been learning the way of medicine since young. He possesses true ability, that's why he's able to pass the 1-star physician examination straight. The guard leader said. The other party was right. There was indeed an exception in the guild. It was the famous physician Mu Hong. Even though physician Mu Hong had never taken any examination prior to passing his 1-star physician examination, such that he wasn't even an apprentice then, he had been accompanying his father on diagnosis and treatment runs, and he was already famous by then. He is just an arrogant lad. How can he be compared to physician Mu Hong? Yarrow harumphed coldly. Physician Mu Hong had begun learning way of medicine from young, and by the age of 13, he was already treating patients by himself. Even though he had never taken the examination prior to that, he practically grew up in the physician guild, and he was well aware of everything here. On the other hand, that fellow clearly knew nothing at all. Given the foolish and ignorant look on his face, and how he didn't even know of the prohibited medicinal herbs, how could the two of them possibly be the same? But no matter what, the other party is a teacher of Tianwu Academy. I don't think that he will complete not care for his reputation like that, the guard leader said. This. Yarrow fell speechless. The standing of a teacher was beneath that of a physician, but due to their relationship with master teachers, it was an esteemed occupation as well. As an official teacher of Tianwu Academy, it was unlikely for him to abandon his pride to cause trouble at the physician guild. He might really possess true ability. Indeed, it's possible that he might, like physician Mu Hong, pass the 1-star physician examination straight and amaze everyone. The two guards held deep respect for teachers. Now that you speak of it, it isn't entirely impossible. Hearing the analysis of the others, Yarrow hesitated for a moment before nodding her head. Just as she was about to continue speaking, the young man who just left a moment ago returned and asked sheepishly, May I know, what procedures are there to the physician examination? Also, what books do I have to read? Yarrow. The guards. Starve cleric, I have one extra edited chapter at hand, so I'll launch a challenge. Post a phrase commonly used in the series that you find interesting, and if one of them receives 100 likes by today, I'll post another chapter. Chapter 331. Challenging the guild leader? Initially, they thought that the other party might really possess true capability, as it was unlikely that a teacher would cause trouble given their esteemed standing. However, after hearing the other party's words, they realized they were overthinking it. To not even know the procedures to the physician examination, the heck was he taking the examination for? Suppressing his anger, the guard leader said, Lu Laoshi, since you don't even know the procedure for the physician examination, I think it is better for you to just drop the matter. Drop the matter? Zhang Xian shook his head. I don't want to take the examination as well, but you just told me that it is impossible to buy those medicinal herbs if I'm not a physician. All right, you just have to tell me what is tested on the physician examination. I'll settle the rest. The crowd tugged on their hair. We don't want to bother you either. Just that, don't you think that you are going a little too far, attempting to take the physician examination despite knowing nothing at all? However, since you are so adamant to shame yourself, we'll wash our hands clean of this matter then. Displeased, the complexion of the guard leader darkened further. Even so, he still explained the procedures of the examination. Similar to the examinations of other occupations, the physician examination tests one's theoretical knowledge and practical skills. After you enter the physician hall, there will be some specialized personnel to bring you around. Hearing those words, the young man nodded, turned around, and walked to the physician hall. Physician who? The one in charge of the physician hall, detests this kind of ignorant examinee who banks on sheer luck to pass. That fellow is probably in for a round of misfortune. I thought that teachers will at least conduct themselves with propriety in consideration of their standing. But from the looks of it, it seems like I was expecting too much. To not even know the procedures of the physician examination, how can he possibly pass the examination? Indeed, if it was so easy to become a physician, there wouldn't be just 30 physicians in the entire city. Seeing how that fellow walked into the physician hall despite knowing nothing at all, everyone shook their heads. The guard leader initially thought that the other party might truly possess true capability. However, upon realizing that the other party was truly ignorant, he felt disdain toward the other party as well. It was often said that the academy's teachers were respectable and modest. After seeing this teacher, he realized that it was all bullshit. Have you seen a person who would dare to take the physician examination despite not knowing a single thing at all? All right, Yarou Xiaojie, we will continue our patrol. See you later. Eventually, the guard leader clasped his fist and prepared to leave. But just as he was about to leave, the ground beneath him suddenly shook. A loud chime reverberated within the physician guild. Dong! It seemed to originate from a huge bell, and under the deafening reverberation, even the ground tremored. What's going on? I've got no idea, but it sounds like it came from the physician hall. Physician hall? That seems to be the case. After hearing the sound, the patients who were lined up for a diagnosis burst into commotion. In contrast to the confusion of the patients, the guard leader's face turned ghastly pale, and he began to tremble uncontrollably. With a fearful voice, he uttered, "This fellow, it can't be that he barged into the Wall of Dilemma." Wall of Dilemma? What's that? Yarou asked doubtfully. She was just a front receptionist. While she was roughly aware of the rules surrounding the physician examination, she didn't know the specific tests on the examination. The Wall of Dilemma is a place where the incurable illnesses are recorded. The illnesses that no one in the physician guild has been able to cure for the past century. The guard leader seemed as though he was about to cry. The illnesses that no one in the physician guild has been able to cure for the past century? Even a 3-star physician like Mu Hong? Yarou was taken aback. In their physician guild branch, the most skilled physician was 3-star physician Mu Hong. If the illnesses that no one could cure were recorded on the wall, didn't that mean that even 3-star physician Mu Hong was helpless before them as well? Indeed. The guard leader nodded his head. Not just him, the physicians in our guild for the past few generations had been unable to do so as well. That's why it is called the Wall of Dilemma. If that's the case, why do you look so worried? Since it's a place where difficult illnesses are recorded, it shouldn't be a problem for him to enter, right? Yarou was perplexed. She thought that it was a huge affair. In the end, didn't that teacher just enter the place where difficult illnesses were recorded? At most, the teacher could just back off after realizing his ignorance. As the guard leader of the physician guild, do you really need to be trembling uncontrollably like this over such a small matter? Yarou wasn't the only one, the other guards were bewildered as well. Their leader had always been a calm person. Taking the encounter from a moment ago as example, even though he was infuriated by the other party's arrogance, he still remained calm and responded to his queries patiently and politely. Why would someone as calm as him become so nervous upon finding out that the other party had barged into this Wall of Dilemma? You all don't know what that place represents. Seeing the casual look on everyone's faces, the guard leader shook his head. What that place represents? That's right. The Wall of Dilemma is a place where only the guild leader of each generation is qualified to enter. Entering such a place means to challenge the incumbent guild leader for his position. With pale, trembling lips, the guard leader explained. Challenging the guild leader for his position? Everyone felt their vision turning dark. What in the world was going on? Why would barging into the Wall of Dilemma equate challenging the guild leader? Written on the Wall of Dilemma are problems that had stumped the physicians of the guild for a long period of time. Seeing the doubt in everyone's eyes, the guard leader smiled bitterly and explained. In order to become the guild leader, one has to possess medical skills far surpassing the others so as to win the respect of the entire guild. Everyone nodded. It was natural that one had to possess skills far surpassing other members to become a guild leader of an occupation. Unlike cultivation, the way of medicine isn't something that can be quantified. You can't simply gauge a person's medical skills by how long the treatment takes. After all, a complete treatment involves many aspects such as the post-recovery care and checking whether any trauma was inflicted in the process of the treatment. A person might be able to treat a patient within 2 days, but in the end, he might only be treating the symptoms rather than the root of the problem, thus leaving room for the illness to make a comeback. On the other hand, another physician could take a whole month to treat the same patient, but he could be treating the root of the problem instead. Everyone nodded in agreement. The strength of a cultivator could be easily gauged via a fight. But for physicians, it was harder to quantify one's ability. Different physicians had different specializations, and the fastest treatment might not necessarily be the most effective one. This was even more so when the two physicians were around the same level. Thus, the Physician Guild came up with a way to determine if a physician was superior to another, the Wall of Dilemma. The guard leader continued. Recorded on the wall are the most difficult problems the physicians of the guild have faced throughout the years, and only those who intend to challenge the current guild leader would enter its premise. The more problems one solves, the more advanced one's medical skill is deemed to be, and thus, the easier it will be for one to gain the respect of the entire guild. If one couldn't even solve a single problem, it will be taken as that the other party was causing trouble and challenging the guild leader's authority. As such, that person will be punished. Everyone blinked their eyes as they came to a realization. It was no wonder why he was so anxious. Despite knowing nothing at all, the other party barged into the Wall of Dilemma, an action taken as a challenge against guild leader. If he were to fail to solve any of the problems listed, he would be subjected to a severe punishment. On the other hand, they, who had misled him, might be implicated as well. But since the illnesses listed on the Wall of Dilemma are problems that no one in the guild is able to solve, even if he were to answer them wrong, no one should know of it, right? After a moment of silence, Yarrow asked. Since it was a wall full of questions that no one could solve, no one should be able to say for sure whether a person's answer was right or wrong. Even if that fellow were to answer randomly, he might just be able to smoke his way through. If only it was that simple. The guard leader smiled bitterly. The Wall of Dilemma is a unique spirit artifact that is linked to the headquarters. If someone challenges the Wall of Dilemma, a 4-star physician on the other side of the wall will check the answer personally. If he deems it to be correct, an orange glow will appear on the wall. If he deems it to be wrong, a red glow will appear instead. Linked to the headquarters? Glow? Everyone was stunned. If that was the case, it was impossible for that Lou Lauscher to falsify his results. Given how ignorantly that fellow acted just now, red glows would only appear again, and then, it would be the end of them. Then that bell is? Yarrow asked. That bell informs the entire Physician Guild that someone has triggered the Wall of Dilemma to challenge the guild leader. At this, the guard leader froze and pointed forward. We're done for. Looking toward where his finger was pointed at, the edges of everyone's mouths twitched. More than a dozen of the top echelons of the guild were currently walking toward them. Guild leader Mu Hong, 3-star physician Du Rao, physician Qing Feng. Every time a name was called, Yarrow's eyebrows would twitch once. They were all figures in the upper echelon of the Physician Guild. The chiming of the bell had summoned all of them here. For someone to challenge him, it was clear how awful the guild leader Mu Hong's complexion would be. What happened? Guild leader Mu Hong immediately walked to the physician hall and asked imposingly. Reporting to the guild leader, a person has just entered, and he seems to be challenging the Wall of Dilemma. An apprentice who was done diagnosing a patient replied. He didn't see the situation clearly, but after hearing the bell, he heard a thing or two from the discussions in the surroundings. Challenging the Wall of Dilemma? Guild leader Mu Hong's eyebrow twitched. Someone was eyeing his seat. Who is it? I didn't get a good look at him. However, He seemed to came from over there so the front receptionist might know something. The apprentice hesitated for a moment before replying. The receptionist? Call those guys over. Guild leader Mu Hong instructed. Yarrow and the guards had no choice but to walk over with tearful faces. Speak, what happened? Who is the one who challenged the wall of dilemma? The guild leader spoke authoritatively. Reporting to the guild leader, it's a teacher from Tianwu Academy who goes by the surname of Lu. The guard leader trembled in fear, but he mustered his courage and answered. A teacher who goes by the surname of Lu? Physician Mu Hong blinked. Why would a teacher enter the wall of dilemma? He is here for the physician examination, so we directed him to the physician hall. We also have no idea how he managed to enter the wall of dilemma, the guard leader said with a quivering voice. He is here for the physician examination? How many stars is he? To challenge the wall of dilemma, is he a 3-star physician? But this doesn't make sense. Guild leader Mu Hong frowned as he contemplated over the matter. Since the other party dared to challenge the wall of dilemma in him, he had to be at least a 3-star physician, but when did such an incredible physician appear in Tianwu Academy? 3-star? The guard leader nearly fainted. Reporting to the guild leader, he doesn't have a rank yet, and he isn't even an apprentice. He isn't even an apprentice? And yet he dares to challenge me? A dark line streaked across physician Mu Hong's forehead. Is his medical skills outstanding? Outstanding, the guard leader cried. It's possible that he doesn't know medicine at all. Chapter 332, Perfect Solution. He doesn't know medicine at all? Guild leader Mu Hong's body trembled. To dare to challenge him despite not knowing the slightest thing about medicine at all. When did the position of a guild leader become so cheap? What happened? Explain everything to me clearly. With a complexion so dark that it seemed as though one could squeeze ink from it, he bellowed. It's like that. The leader of the guards and Yarrow explained the situation with Lu Laoshi in detail to guild leader Mu Hong. After hearing the words of the duo, regardless whether it was Mu Hong, Du Rao, Cheng Feng, or the other physicians, they were all dumbfounded. How could there be such an eccentric person in the world? To manage to stumble into the wall of dilemma like that, wasn't he lucky? Guild leader, given that he has triggered the wall of dilemma, connection with the headquarters must have already been established. What should we do now? Physician Cheng Feng asked. Upon the activation of the wall of dilemma, a bell would chime and the wall of dilemma would attempt to establish connection with the headquarters. Most likely, a 4-star physician would have already been stationed on the other side, waiting to assess the challenger. If they were to intrude into the test halfway, it was highly probable that they would incur the ire of the headquarters. What else can we do? We can only wait here until he's done. Since he doesn't even know the slightest thing about medicine, he would surely be unable to answer any of the questions. Once he fails, we'll teach him a lesson and kick him out. Mu Hong's complexion looked awful. Challenging the wall of dilemma didn't just undermine his authority and sully his prestige. More importantly, the headquarters would be alarmed of this farce as well. To allow such an ignorant oaf to challenge the wall of dilemma. Just the thought of what the headquarters would think of them made Mu Hong tempted to kill the other party. For such a blemish to appear on a Tier 1 Kingdom Physician Guild, could the situation be any more darned? Yes. Knowing that the guild leader was truly enraged over this matter, the crowd didn't dare to even breathe loudly. Can we see the results of the wall of dilemma from here? While a gloomy atmosphere was looming in this area, there was huge bustle over at the apprentices' and patients' side. The apprentices had finally understood what was going on, and they immediately put aside their work to observe the abrupt situation out of curiosity. One of the more knowledgeable people in the crowd nodded. The wall of dilemma of the physician hall is constructed with a unique material similar to that used in the examination hall of the master teacher pavilion. If the challenger inside were to submit an erroneous answer, the exterior wall of the room will flash red. On the other hand, if a correct answer is submitted, an orange glow will appear. Furthermore, there are different tiers to the answer as well. Tiers? That's right. Different techniques and medicinal herbs used in the treatment of the same illness would yield different effectiveness. As such, treatment methods can be classified as subpass, pass, good, and excellent. A ray of orange light represents subpass, 2 rays represent pass, 3 rays represent good, and 4 rays represent excellent. Back then, guild leader Mu Hong consecutively solved 4 illnesses on the Wall of Dilemma, and on top of that, every single treatment method he submitted ended up inducing 3 rays of orange light, dazzling the entire physician hall. It was truly an unforgettable sight for all that was present back then. Recalling that incredible scene back then, the faces of a few veterans of the guild reddened in agitation. Those illnesses were problems that had remained unsolved by the geniuses of the guild throughout the years. Those problems might not be anything much to those 4-star physicians of the headquarters, but to Tianwu Kingdom, they were questions of absurd difficulty. Guild leader Mu Hong's feat of solving 4 questions with 3 orange rays of light each had left everyone both awestruck then. Guild leader Mu Hong sure is incredible. Indeed. Given how that fellow who just barged in knew nothing at all, a red light will probably appear very soon. Discussions could be heard around the room. 1. Suddenly, the wall of the physician hall trembled, and an imposing aura emanated from it. That fellow has just finished answering a question on the Wall of Dilemma, and the physician on the other side is currently checking it. I think he'll be in for a round of misfortune soon. Halfway through his words, that person's eyes suddenly widened. A reverberation echoed in the room, and he suddenly froze. The wall before him emanated a bright light, but it wasn't red. It was orange. How is this possible? Did he answer it correctly? But how can that be? These questions have remained unsolved over the course of so many years, and innumerable 3-star physicians had attempted them only to end in failure. How could he possibly succeed? Isn't he an ignorant oaf who knows nothing at all? Rubbing his eyes, that person stared at the sight before him in disbelief. It seems like not only did he provide a correct answer, it seems to be above the level of subpass. A voice sounded among the crowd. After which, before the light on the wall could fade completely, another burst of light took its place. The 2 rays of light overlapped with one another, filling the room with tremendous brilliance. 1. Before everyone's gaze of disbelief, the wall shook once more and yet another ray of light burst forth. For a moment, it was as if a sun had descended upon the room, blinding everyone's eyes with its radiance. 3 rays. 4 rays. 5 rays. A total of 5 rays of orange light had appeared from the wall. This is perfect. A perfect answer. Upon seeing the sight, the mouths of a few veterans in the room twitched. They were rendered completely speechless by the sight. It was common knowledge that there were only 4 levels to a treatment method: subpass, pass, good, and excellent. But in truth, there was another level that few knew about, a level that only existed in the legends. A treatment method of that level was capable of solving an illness completely in the shortest period of time while using the most inexpensive and common medicinal herbs. It was known as perfect treatment method. Such treatment methods possessed absurd compatibility with the illness that not the slightest side effect would be derived from the treatment. Compared to this, all other treatment methods were no different from dirt. However, such level of treatment method existed only in the legends. In the several thousand years of history since the establishment of Tianwu Kingdom, no one had ever heard of the existence of a perfect treatment method. Yet, not only did that ignorant oaf actually manage to come up with such a treatment method. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? 5 rays of orange light? What in the world is going on? A perfect treatment method? The entire room burst into an uproar. Upon seeing this sight, guild leader Mu Hong felt a little lightheaded. He immediately turned to Yaro and the guard leader and glared at them. The heck? Didn't you say that the fellow who went in was an ignorant fellow? Explain to me what is going on. Tears streamed down the face of the guard leader. Brother, I thought you didn't know anything at all. How in the world did you manage to solve the incurable illnesses of the Wall of Dilemma? Furthermore, for it to induce 5 rays of orange light, a perfect treatment method? is probably just lucky. Perhaps he will fail at the next question. Biting his tongue, the guard leader could only force his way through. However, before he could finish his words, the wall shook once more. 11111. Another 5 rays of orange light burst into the surroundings once more. Another perfect treatment method? What the heck is he? Seeing the second instance of 5 rays of orange light, another huge uproar exploded in the hall. The guard leader felt a stinging sensation on his face, and he nearly spurted blood and died from frustration. He had just said that the other party was only lucky when the other party immediately overthrew his words with his actions. Even if you are so eager to slap my face, surely you don't have to do it so quickly. 11111. However, that wasn't the end of it yet. The light grew brighter and brighter, and the intervals between them grew shorter and shorter. It was as if they had stepped into a festive fireworks celebration. Wave after wave of orange light assaulted their vision. 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. 18 times. It was only less than an hour since the appearance of the first instance of the 5 rays of orange light, and it had already appeared consecutively for another 17 times. Slowly, the shock grew into numbness. Guild leader Mu Hong's lips quivered. At this point, he was already on the verge of tears. He thought that he could already be considered as a genius given how he induced 3 rays of orange light for 4 times. He thought that no one in Tianwu Kingdom would be able to match his feat. However, after seeing this sight, he realized that his accomplishment was truly nothing at all. The other party doesn't know medicine? What a joke! If the other party doesn't know medicine, then what do I count as? Am I worse than an ignorant oaf? Guild leader. Seeing Mu Hong's current state, the guard leader called cautiously after noticing the latter's daze. Guild leader, your head! I am no longer the guild leader, that fellow inside is. Mu Hong flung his sleeves furiously. As long as one's result in the Wall of Dilemma surpassed that of the previous guild leader, one would automatically take his place. Mu Hong had only managed to induce 3 rays of orange light 4 times, but the other party had achieved the level of perfect for 18 times straight. At this point, there was already no way to dispute this. In other words, that fellow inside was already the guild leader. Yes. The mouth of the guard leader twitched, and he hurriedly shut his mouth fearfully. He was afraid that this physician Mu Hong would go on a rampage and kill him on the spot if he were to speak any further. He. Ya Rose shuddered fearfully. She felt so much regret that her guts were turning green. If only she knew that the fellow inside possessed incredible medical skill that was superior to even that of the guild leader, she would have never dared to act so rudely to him. Considering how disdainfully she treated him at the start, it was about time for her to resign from her job and go into hiding. In contrast to the gloomy atmosphere floating around guild leader Mu Hong and the others, the majority of the crowd in the hall was rowdy, excited by this incredible sight. 5 rays of orange light. All 18 of those solutions are a perfect treatment method. To be able to see such a formidable physician overcome the Wall of Dilemma, I feel like I haven't lived my life in vain. Hurry up and inform the old master. Wasn't his illness listed on the Wall of Dilemma? There is finally a cure for him. The commotion slowly crescendoed as everyone's eyes burned with excitement. The explanations and descriptions from the apprentices and veterans had given them a rough idea of the current situation. To actually solve 18 difficult illnesses listed on the Wall of Dilemma, and on top of that, for all of them to reach the level of perfect treatment method, the medical skill of the person inside had already surpassed the capability of a 3-star physician. It was a huge benefit to have such an incredible physician in Tianwu Kingdom. After all, no matter how much money they had, if they couldn't find a sufficiently capable physician to treat them, it would be for naught. There are only a total of 20 questions on the Wall of Dilemma. Could he really solve all of them in one go? Putting aside his dismay, physician Mu Hong stared at the wall before him intently. Other people might not be aware of how many questions there were on the Wall of Dilemma, but as the previous guild leader and someone who had challenged the Wall of Dilemma, it was natural that he was aware of the situation on sight. Even though these questions had accumulated over several centuries, every succeeding guild leader would always strike a few questions off the wall, leaving only a total of 20 questions. The other party had already solved the 18th, and every single answer was on the level of perfect. Could this fellow really solve all 20 questions in one go? Impossible. The final question is an illness who no one was able to solve in the past several centuries. It is impossible for him to solve it. Recalling the final question, Mu Hong clenched his jaws. Even though the other illnesses were difficult as well, this concept of difficult was only limited to Tianwu Kingdom. To the physicians in Xianyuan Kingdom or other more advanced regions, those problems were nothing more than a walk in the park. However, the final question was an illness that stumped even the physicians of conferred kingdoms. It was an extremely rare and troublesome illness. Rumor has it that a 5-star physician had once attempted to find a solution to the illness, but in the end, he wasn't even able to find the root of the problem, leaving him at a loss to even where he should start. 1111. Just as his thoughts were wandering around, orange rays of light filled the hall once more. The 19th question was also solved with a perfect grade. It's down to the last question now. Physician Mu Hong's breathing quickened. Chapter 333. We don't know. Either a middle-aged man was seated on the lofty throne within Tianwu Royal Palace. The Emperor of Tianwu Kingdom, Amo Tianxue. You say that someone challenged the guild leader in the Physician Guild, and that he solved 19 consecutive questions on the Wall of Dilemma? Amo Tianxue was staring at a guard in disbelief. He was well aware of the fact that the questions on the Wall of Dilemma were difficult illnesses which had baffled innumerable genius physicians over the years. Even if a 4-star physician came, he would definitely be unable to solve all of them in a single go. Yet, a seemingly unimpressive fellow had solved 19 successive questions. On top of that, his solutions were on the level of perfection. This is insanity. It is the unmistakable truth. A gray-robed man clasped his fist respectfully. This gray-robed man's aura was rather irregular, but one could still tell that he was a Zhongshu realm expert. Those who were familiar with the kingdom's workings would definitely recognize his identity as a member of the most secretive army in Tianwu Kingdom, Shadow Squad. The Shadow Squad was an organization directly controlled by Amo Tianxue, and they often carried out unhonorable missions in the darkness. With such a huge affair at the Physician Guild, all of them rushed to the royal palace in first time to inform the emperor of the news. To be capable of solving so many questions on the Wall of Dilemma and provide perfect treatment methods over and above all, that person's mastery in the way of medicine has most probably already reached the standard of a 4-star or even 5-star physician. Amo Tianxue clenched his fists tightly. Indeed. If he were to offer his services to the kingdom, the traumas that occur in the guards' training would be resolved easily. Perhaps, with his help, Your Majesty might even be able to achieve a breakthrough to reach that level, the gray-robed man said. You're right. Amo Tianxue's eyes lit up. Then, with an anxious look, he asked, Have you found out who he is? There was no such thing as a perfect cultivation technique. As such, all kinds of traumas would appear in one's cultivation. Even though most of them do not pose a threat to one's life and do not affect one's ability to exert their strength, it locks down one's cultivation, making it difficult to progress further. If one can solve his traumas, there is a high possibility that he will be able to advance another step in his cultivation. But of course, that is only a possibility. After all, a physician is only capable of treatment. Unlike master teachers, a physician is incapable of offering pointers for one to achieve a breakthrough. Even so, resolving one's trauma would extend one's longevity and make one more spirited. This is also the reason why physician is one of the top occupations of the upper 9 paths. We have already looked into the matter. His name is Lu Qing, and he is a newly recruited teacher in Tianwu Academy. At 24 this year, his cultivation is at Tongxian Realm primary stage. He passed the teacher examination in Kuahai City's Teacher Guild, and he once took a class at Kuahai City for a year. Here is his information. After which, the gray-robed man passed a piece of paper over. The fact that the Shadow Squad was able to gather comprehensive information on Lu Qing so quickly bore testimony to their fearsome prowess. On! Grabbing the paper, Mo Tianxue swiftly browsed through the contents. All kinds of personal information on Lu Qing had been recorded on the document. The identity that the Master Teacher Pavilion created for Zhang Xian was truly impeccable. There were no flaws, and even the Shadow Squad was only able to gather this much. To think that an ordinary teacher in Kuai City would possess such astounding medical skills! Help me prepare another identical set of the gift that was meant for Master Teacher Zhang Xian, and as soon as he leaves the Wall of Dilemma, we will head over to greet him. After browsing through his information, Mo Tianxue affirmed that there was nothing wrong with his background, and he gestured excitedly. The present for Zhang Shi? The gray-robed man was taken aback. As a close aide of the Emperor, he knew how valuable the gift prepared for Zhang Shi was. Indeed! A talent of his level is already on par with Zhang Shi. In fact, his usefulness surpasses even that of Zhang Shi. Mo Tianxue reasoned. Yes. The gray-robed man nodded. All right, let's go. Accompany me to the Physician Guild. After which, Mo Tianxue dismounted his throne and began forward without any hesitation. Tianwu Academy. Principal Xia was sitting gloomily alone in his courtyard. No matter who it was, it would be hard for one not to feel embarrassed getting criticized by a new teacher. Principal. He was thinking of a way to vent his frustration when an elder rushed into his courtyard. What's wrong? Principal Xia frowned. That Lu Laoshi went to challenge the Wall of Dilemma, an elder said. Challenge the Wall of Dilemma? To provoke guild leader Mu Hong, is there something wrong with that fellow's head? Principal Xia's body swayed, and he nearly blacked out. Instead of teaching your class properly, what are you doing over at the Physician Guild? On top of that, challenging their Wall of Dilemma and provoking their guild leader, you must be mad. He is truly a problematic teacher. Nevertheless, he possesses true capability and will become a pillar of the academy in the future. We mustn't allow anything to happen to him. The other party had embarrassed him in public, but as fellow teachers, he felt obligated to stand up for him. Bring me my name scroll. I will visit guild leader Mu Hong now. Hopefully, he won't pursue the matter on my account. No, that's not enough. Challenging the Wall of Dilemma is equivalent to an attempt to wrest authority from the current guild leader. Guild leader Mu Hong won't allow this matter to simply rest. Let's go to the Master Teacher Pavilion to look for Pavilion Master Jiang. With his help, the situation should be much easier to resolve. Thus, Principal Xia stood up and prepared to rush to the Master Teacher Pavilion. Cough, cough. Principal, wait for a moment. Allow me to finish my words first. The elder felt stifled. The principal had reacted violently after hearing a single sentence. He couldn't find a chance to cut into his words at all. What's the use of talking about it? I know guild leader Mu Hong's temper well. He will definitely fly into a rage upon seeing someone eye his position. Even though that Lu Laoshi is a little arrogant, he is still a member of our Tianwu Academy. We mustn't allow anything to happen to him. Otherwise, the pride of our academy will be sullied. Principal Xia swung his hands and rushed out of the courtyard. However, barely after he took 2 steps, the elder stopped him. Principal, allow me to first finish my words. The elder felt faint-headed. Why are you so agitated? Can't you allow me to finish my words? Speak. Can it be that we're already too late and that guild leader Mu Hong has already laid his hands on him? Seeing the anxious look on the other party's face, an ominous omen loomed over his mind. Getting Principal Xia's heart skipped a beat. That's not it. Lu Laoshi has solved 19 questions on the Wall of Dilemma consecutively, and he provided a perfect treatment method for every single one of them. Right now, the entire Physician Guild is in an uproar. Afraid that the other party would jump into conclusion once more, the elder spoke quickly. Solved 19 questions on the Wall of Dilemma? Provided a perfect treatment method for each of them. Principal Xia was taken aback. It took him moments before he managed to digest the other party's words, and his eyes nearly popped out from its sockets. You mean to say that Lu Laoshi has already broken physician Mu Hong's record and he is now the new guild leader of the physician guild? Yes. The elder flashed a bitter smile. When he first heard this news himself, he also felt as though the world had gone mad. His condition then wasn't any better than that of the current Principal Xie. How is this possible? Principal Xie froze in shock. Oblivious to the huge uproar he had caused, Zhang Xian was staring at the final question on the wall of dilemma. The Library of Heaven's Path could only reflect flaws, it couldn't provide a solution to these flaws. When a person is ill, it means that a flaw has appeared on him, resulting in his current condition. As long as one is able to identify the crux of the problem and work backward, it isn't too difficult to treat an illness. That was precisely the reason why, even though the first 19 questions had stumped many talented physicians, Zhang Xian was able to solve them easily, providing perfect treatment solutions without thinking for long. Innate muscular deficiency resulting in the lack of strength in one's body in a lifespan of only 20 years. How do we treat this? The final question carved on the wall of dilemma was just 2 short sentences, and it seemed to be simple. Innate muscular deficiency? With a will of his mind, a book appeared in Zhang Xian's head. Zhang Xian had taken in a substantial number of books in the Master Teacher Pavilion. As physician was one of the top occupations of the upper 9 paths, there was a substantial collection within. It just so happened that there was an introduction on the illness. Innate muscular deficiency results in the stagnation of the growth in one's muscles. A person born with such a condition can only lie on the bed, unable to exercise or cultivate. There was only a brief introduction to the illness in the book. There wasn't a solution provided. Let's see whether there is any solution to it. Flaws. Placing his hand on the wall, Zhang Xian thought. 1. A book appeared in his mind. Innate muscular deficiency refers to a lack in strength in one's muscles. Flaws, an inborn damage in one's meridians. On the portion of the book detailing the flaws of innate muscular deficiency, the locations of the damaged meridians, acupoints, and body parts were stated. This. With a glance, Zhang Xian suddenly froze. This illness is actually the opposite of the Heaven's Path golden body? He had never heard of the illness, but based on the flaws, he realized that it bore striking resemblance to the cultivation method of Heaven's Path golden body. That was to say, one could easily solve this illness through the cultivation method of Heaven's Path golden body. The Heaven's Path golden body shouldn't be leaked out, but this is a part of the physician examination. If I were to answer this question inaccurately, I might not be able to become an official physician. Feeling distressed, Zhang Xian rubbed his glabella. He didn't know about the wall of dilemma, and up until now, he still thought that he was only taking the physician examination. Since I know the specific points where the flaws appear in, as long as one uses Jinqi to nourish these few spots, the illness should still be treated even without the cultivation method of Heaven's Path golden body. After hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xian suddenly slapped his forehead. All along, he had been thinking in the capacity of an individual, neglecting the fact that the Jinqi could come from an external source. As long as he wrote down points that needed to be nourished with Jinqi and avoid mentioning the formula in detail, the Heaven's Path golden body would not be leaked. After all, the crux to all cultivation techniques lies in the formula to propel one's Jinqi. All right. After confirming the treatment, Zhang Xian picked up a brush and started writing on the wall. It'll probably be impossible for him to solve this question. Physician Mu Hong stood stiffly before the physician hall with his hands clenched by his sides. The other party had already surpassed his feat, replacing him as the new guild leader. No matter how depressed he got over this matter, this was already a fact. At this moment, all he wanted to know was whether this Lu fellow would be able to solve all 20 problems on the wall of dilemma with a perfect grade. If that really happens, the Tianwu Kingdom Physician Guild would gain great prestige because of this. However, even 4-star physicians would be puzzled by the final question. Is it even possible for that Lu Laoshi to succeed? 1. Just as they were anxiously waiting for the result, the wall before them started to tremor once more. The results are out. Everyone waited with bated breaths. Physician Mu Hong stiffened in nervousness. Who? A bright ray of light radiated from the wall. It's a ray of white light? What does white light means? Red light should indicate failure while orange light reflects a correct answer. Why would there be a white light? Upon seeing the light, everyone became flabbergasted. Even Physician Mu Hong widened his eyes in astonishment. The answer should either be right or right. In other words, the light should either be red or orange. For a white light to be emanated instead. What the heck? Can the wall in the physician hall have spoiled? That should be impossible, right? Everyone blinked in disbelief. Wait, something seems to be appearing. Just when everyone was overwhelmed with shock, someone from within the crowd shouted suddenly. Swiftly turning toward the smooth wall, for words slowly floated into appearance. We don't know either. Starved cleric, sorry to delay updates on a cliffhanger, straight face. I've posted it on my Discord already, but my editor and I have been rather busy lately, so do pardon us. I won't be able to guarantee updates for the next 2 days, but rest assured that we'll make up for the chapters lost over the weekend. Chapter 334, Guild Leader. We don't know either? What does that mean? I have no idea too. It is said that answers to the Wall of Dilemma are appraised personally by 4-star masters. For we don't know either to appear. Does that mean that even 4-star physicians are unable to determine whether the answer Lu Laoshi gave is correct? That can't be true, right? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that Lu Laoshi's medical skill surpasses that of a 4-star physician? Everyone stared at the wall before them, dumbfounded. The 4 words "we don't know either" left everyone faint-headed. The ones on the other side of the Wall of Dilemma are 4-star physicians. And even they are unable to determine whether the answer is correct or wrong. The heck? Lu Laoshi, exactly what kind of answer did you give? Such that other side does not dare to reject it outright, even admitting its ignorance? The corners of Physician Mu Hong's lips twitched. He found himself swaying from side to side, unable to maintain his balance. He thought he had imagined every circumstance possible, even that of 5 rays of orange light. Never in his wildest dreams had he expected that the other party would admit to not knowing the answer. Don't know your head. All of you are 4-star physicians. To speak of such words before so many people. Are you still in your right mind? 1. Before they could recover from their shock, the 4 words on the wall had faded and another line appeared. We will announce our judgment 10 days later. These words disappeared slowly as well. Seems like the other side is truly unsure. They will need to report to a higher level branch or look for a patient with innate muscular deficiency in order to test out the treatment method. Even though it was said that the Wall of Dilemma was connected to the headquarter, this headquarter actually referred to another branch which was just a tier higher than that of the Tianwu Physician Guild branch. After all, the headquarter was incomparably powerful, filled with 8-star to 9-star physicians. How can it possibly be connected to small place like Tianwu Kingdom Physician Guild? It was just like how Zhang Xian requested for an unraveling pill from the headquarter in the Tianxian Kingdom Apothecary Guild back then. In truth, their communications had merely reached Tianwu Kingdom, and Apothecary Hong Yun was dispatched. Otherwise, if everyone were to contact the headquarter for all random and miscellaneous matters, wouldn't it die from exhaustion? We would give our judgment 10 days later. So does it mean that he solved the question, or not? The crowd was stunned. Even if he answered the last question wrongly, this Lu Laoshi has already answered 19 questions with a perfect grade. He has already surpassed Guild Leader Mu Hong, making him the new Guild Leader. Someone commented. Everyone came to a realization. So what if that fellow got the final question wrongly? The results had already far surpassed that of any previous guild leader. Without a doubt, he had already become the new guild leader. However, wasn't his purpose here the physician examination? If he doesn't have a rank beforehand, what rank should he be assigned? Someone raised his doubt. Suddenly, the entire room fell silent. Indeed, if he doesn't possess any rank as a physician from before, how should we handle this situation? He was able to solve all of the questions on the wall of dilemma, even forcing 4-star physicians to admit their ignorance. The level of mastery of his medical skill definitely far surpasses that of a 3-star, perhaps even reaching the level of a 5-star. However, since even the guild wasn't able to evaluate such a high-ranked physician, how can they issue such an emblem to him? Don't worry, the answer will be out in 10 days. Once the answer is determined, the headquarter will decide his rank personally, so we don't have to worry too much. A 2-star physician said. On. The crowd nodded. That made sense as well. This shouldn't be a matter within their consideration. Given how the other party challenged the wall of dilemma and solved so many questions, even jotting down an answer beyond the understanding of 4-star physicians, this problem should be one for the headquarter to bear. There wasn't a need for them to think so much. Jia! They were still discussing when the door to the physician hall opened and Zhang Xian walked out. Upon seeing the huge crowd gathered outside, and that all of the gazes were on him, Zhang Xian was given a shock. What is going on? He had merely taken a physician examination. Why was there such a huge crowd, and why were all of them looking at him? Glancing around, he finally found the leader of the guards in Yaro, and the hurried over. Why is the examination different what you told me? So, have I passed the examination? According to their words, the physician examination should be no different from that of other occupations. Yet, after he went in, he didn't see anyone, only a wall which kept posing questions to him. It was completely different from what they said. It can't be that I took the wrong examination? Will they fail me for this? Guild leader, you are jesting. The leader of the guards trembled uncontrollably. Guild leader? Zhang Xian was stunned. He stared at the duo, and just he was about to ask them what they meant, more than a dozen of physicians with an emblem pinned on their chests walked over and clasped their fists. Paying our respects to Guild Leader Lu. Guild Leader Lu? What does this mean? Zhang Xian was dumbfounded. He had no idea what was going on. It is just a physician examination. Why is everyone calling me Guild Leader? Did they eat something wrong this morning? Guild Leader Lu challenged the wall of dilemma and solved 19 questions consecutively. As such, you have become the new leader of our physician guild. Physician Mu Hong stepped forward. New guild leader? Zhang Xian blinked his eyes. Becoming a guild leader just by answering a few questions? Isn't this too much of a child's play? The others swiftly explained the situation to him, and upon comprehending what was going on, Zhang Xian went speechless. He had only intended to take the physician examination. Never in his dreams did he expect to cause such a huge commotion and become the guild leader of the physician guild. Even so, everything had already happened, and there was nothing much he could do. Remembering the initial aim he had in mind coming to the physician guild, he turned to Yaro and asked, Then, since I became the guild leader, do I have to write to purchase white angelica flower, crimson edge leaf, wolf venom grass? All of these medicinal herbs? Yaro cried. She had just said that the other party didn't have the qualifications to purchase it, and he went on immediately to become the guild leader of the physician guild. This face slap. Since you are the guild leader, of course you do have the qualifications to purchase these medicinal herbs. However, we don't have all of the herbs you want here. Upon knowing about the entire situation, Mu Hong hesitated for a moment before explaining to the other party. Physicians do utilize poison in their treatments, but it is extremely rare. While the guild had white angelica flower, crimson edge leaf, and such medicinal herbs, it didn't have the more potent poisonous medicinal herbs. Then, bring me those that can be found here first, Zhang Xian said. On. Mu Hong replied and issued some instructions to Yaro. It didn't take long for Yaro to return with a huge bag of medicinal herbs. After taking a look, Zhang Xian verified that all except 2 of the medicinal herbs he needed were inside. Gold leaf, spark twig, and 9 worms flower are lethal poison, so we don't have any of them here. However, the poison hall will definitely have them, Mu Hong said. Poison hall? Zhang Xian shook his head. Naturally, Zhang Xian knew that the poison hall had them as well. However, it would take him 4 to 5 days just for a to-and-fro trip to the Red Lotus City. On top of that, he would require an additional 10 days to tread through the Red Lotus Range to arrive at and return from the Poison Hall. In total, the journey would take at least half a month. By the time he returned, it would already be way past 10 days. Right, I heard that Pavilion Master Jiang likes collecting valuable medicinal herbs. You might be able to find those 2 herbs from him. After hesitating for a moment, Mu Hong suddenly recalled something and said, Pavilion Master Jiang? All right. Zhang Xian nodded. It might have been difficult for him to obtain those 2 valuable medicinal herbs from anyone else, but Pavilion Master Jiang was his student. As long as he appeared before the other party as Yang Xian, obtaining these 2 medicinal herbs shouldn't be a problem at all. How much do all of these medicinal herbs cost? Keeping the medicinal herbs into his storage ring, Zhang Xian asked. A total of 14 million gold coins. Mu Hong clasped his hand. 14 million gold coins? Zhang Xian was astounded. He thought that it would only cost a few 100,000 gold coin. For it add up to 14 million gold coin, this was daylight robbery. But considering that he was already the guild leader, it was impossible for the other party to lie to him blatantly in public. Thus, he could only hand over a huge wad of cash helplessly. 10 million might be a huge sum, but Zhang Xian accrued quite a substantial wealth back when he was still in Tianxian Kingdom. As such, he was still able to bear with such expenditure. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving now. Physician Mu Hong, I will only serve as an honorary guild leader, so I'll be depending on you to deal with the matters of the guild. Zhang Xian only came here just to buy medicinal herbs. Since he had already achieved his goal, there was no need for him to remain here. Thus, he clasped his fist and bided farewell. Everyone thought that the new guild leader would immediately attempt to conduct a reorganization of the entire guild. After all, most newly appointed leaders tended to flaunt their authority by trying to instill new changes to the organization. Yet, contrary to their expectations, the other party simply dumped everything on Physician Mu Hong and left. This left everyone dumbfounded. Farewell! Ignoring the bewildered gazes of the crowd, Zhang Xian walked out of the Physician Guild. It didn't take long before he disappeared from their sight. He wasn't interested in being a guild leader or whatsoever. His only goal at the moment was to successfully advance as a 2-star master teacher so as to gain the authority to look up the affairs of Emperor Kong Shi and find the solution to his innate fetal poison. There was nothing more important than this. What happened? After Zhang Xian left, everyone was silent for a long time. At this moment, a perplexed elder suddenly walked into the guild. Physician who? You aren't at the physician hall? Upon seeing the elder, the crowd froze in shock. Physician who was the physician in charge of the physician examinations. How in the world was he only walking into the guild at this moment? I just went out for a moment. What's going on? Physician who had been away the entire time, so he had no idea what was going on. He was just perplexed as to why such a huge crowd, not to mention guild leader Mu Hong and the other influential elders, was gathered here. Went out for a moment. Everyone was speechless. They had considered the possibility that Lu Laoshi might have intentionally challenged the Wall of Dilemma. But judging from how Physician who wasn't around then, there was a high chance that the other party really stumbled into the room accidentally. But yet he still managed to solve all of the questions on the Wall of Dilemma. Does it have to be so darned? You all are saying that, in the hour I was gone, someone barged into the physician hall and solved all of the questions on the Wall of Dilemma with perfect treatment methods? Soon, someone explained the situation to Physician who, and in that instant, Physician who could only hear thunder rumbling in his head. For such a matter to happen while he was gone, it seems like he wouldn't be able to escape the blame for neglecting his responsibility. The ruckus that Zhang Xian's successful challenge of the Wall of Dilemma caused wasn't just limited to Tianwu Kingdom. On the other end of the Wall of Dilemma, a few elders were gathered together. They were all staring at one another blankly. The innate muscular deficiency is a terminal disease. Back then, Physician Fei Qing attempted to solve this affliction, but even he fell in defeat before it. In the end, he could only watch as his patient fell into death's embrace. The answer that physician gave us. Can it really be the right treatment method to the illness? That. I don't know either, but there are two ways to check on it. We can either report it upward or we can try the solution on someone with innate muscular deficiency. I remember that the second princess of the Alliance suffers from innate muscular deficiency. Indeed. Prepare the carriages, let's head off to the Alliance head residence now. The few elders stood up simultaneously. Chapter 335, Myriad Kingdom Alliance. There were countless kingdoms like Tianxian and Tianwu scattered all over the continent. The ranks of a kingdom are as follows: unranked, Tianxian Kingdom, Tier 2 Kingdom, Beiwu Kingdom, Tier 1 Kingdom, Tianwu Kingdom, and Conferred Kingdom, Xianyuan Kingdom. Due to the multitude of kingdoms, conflict and war were inevitable. Thus, in order to mediate the conflicts among the kingdoms, an existence transcending beyond the system of kingdoms emerged. Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The Wall of Dilemma was connected to the Physician Guild of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The alliance head who those elders spoke of was the most authoritative figure within the alliance, the one whom all emperors bowed down to and dared not defy. Soon, the carriage arrived at the alliance head residence. Report to the alliance head that guild leader Meng and physician Hong from the Physician Guild requests an audience. Yes. Soon, under the lead of the guards, the physicians walked into the palace-like alliance head residence. You're saying that you found a way to treat Liena? Arriving at the main hall, a middle-aged man looked at them with glowing eyes. He exuded an aura of authority and power which all would defer to. We aren't sure about whether the treatment method is effective or not, so we would like to. Guild leader Meng's face flushed as he hesitated for a moment before continuing. Try it out. Audacious. As the most authoritative man in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, it was already a huge torture for him to watch helplessly as his daughter suffer. Yet, these physicians were saying that they want to experiment an unverified treatment method on his daughter. If something wrong were to happen, who could bear the responsibility? Are you suggesting to experiment with my daughter's life? Raising his eyebrows, a menacing aura emanated from that middle-aged man. In an instant, the two physicians felt as though they were suddenly plunged into massive storm, and the world was ripping apart before them. The alliance head of the Myriad King Alliance wasn't a hereditary position but a nominated one. Without absolute strength, it was impossible for one to rise up to the position. I dare not to! Guild leader Meng's face paled. Exhaling deeply, he said, Alliance head, please allow me to finish my words first. If you don't wish to have the princess take on this risk, then we won't say any more on the matter. On! The middle-aged man nodded gravely. We are indeed helpless before the illness the princess is suffering from, but just today, a physician from a Tier 1 kingdom has delivered us a plausible treatment method to verify, Guild leader Meng said. Upon hearing that it was a treatment method from a Tier 1 kingdom, the middle-aged man's complexion turned even more awful. Even a 5-star physician of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance was unable to solve the matter. What kind of solution could a measly physician from a Tier 1 kingdom possibly offer? Are you jesting with me? But even though the middle-aged man was infuriated, he didn't say a thing. He simply stared at the duo coldly, waiting silently to see what they had to say. Alliance head, you must be thinking how absurd it must be for us to take the treatment method from a measly Tier 1 kingdom for real. But if you were to see the treatment methods that person sent prior to that, you won't be thinking the same. As though reading the thoughts of the other party, a bitter smile flashed across Guild leader Meng's face. That person challenged the Wall of Dilemma, and in a single hour, he solved 19 questions. On top of that, all of the solutions he gave reached the level of perfect. All 19 solutions are at the level of perfect? The middle-aged man was taken aback. Are you certain of this? The Physician Guild's Wall of Dilemma was where all the difficult illnesses uncovered over the years were recorded. One could already be considered as a genius among geniuses if one could solve a question or two on it. To solve 19 at once, and for all of the solutions to be perfect. This meant that the other party's comprehension of the way of medicine had already reached an incredibly high level. Yes. This is the treatment method he proposed for the last question. His idea is extremely novel, and none of us here have ever seen something like this before. Upon recalling that the second princess is afflicted with the same illness, we came over in hopes of trying it. If it's really effective, the princess will be able to recover from her affliction, Guild Leader Meng said. The middle-aged man hesitated. There wasn't a single person in the world who would be willing to allow his own daughter act as a guinea pig. Other than the method he proposed, we truly can't think of any other solutions. Furthermore, the second princess doesn't have much time left. Thus, I beseech you to give it a try. Guild Leader Meng clasped his fist. Those afflicted with innate muscular deficiency were fated to be unable to reach their 20s. The princess was already 19 this year, and her condition was deteriorating with every single passing day. Even if this treatment method was ineffective, it was much better than doing nothing at all. All right. I'll be troubling you then. After a long moment of silence, the middle-aged man closed his eyes and exhaled deeply. If there was any other choice, he would have never allowed his daughter to undergo such risk. Soon, the princess was brought over. Pardon my rudeness. Taking a deep breath, Guild Leader Meng recalled the treatment method written on the wall of dilemma and drove the Jinqi in her body. Woo 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 woo. The wind howled. The strength of a 4-star physician had already surpassed that of Zhizun realm. Even if he didn't come into direct contact with the other party, he was still able to send a surge of Jinqi into the other party's acupoints to clear her trauma. Pum 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 pum. Soon, an immense amount of Jinqi was sent through the other party's acupoints and meridians according to the treatment method detailed on the wall of dilemma. Who? Exhaling deeply, Guild Leader Meng wiped the sweat off his forehead. There was simply too many acupoints and meridians one had to deal with in the treatment method. Furthermore, many of these meridians and acupoints were narrow, and thus, he had to concentrate deeply. It was fortunate that he possessed superior medical skills and a high cultivation, otherwise, a single careless mistake could easily spell the other party's death. I wonder if it's effective. After carrying out the instructions on the treatment method strictly, Guild Leader Meng glanced at the second princess worriedly. But with just this single glance, his entire body shuddered and his eyeballs were popped out from their sockets. The second princess, who was still lying completely motionless a moment ago, suddenly leaped off the bed and smashed her fist into the ground, causing stone fragments to fly everywhere. Rendered speechless by the sight before them, the other physicians trembled in astonishment as their lower jaws fell to the ground. The middle-aged man stared at the situation with a dumbfounded expression. At this point, he was already on the verge of going insane. His second daughter had been diagnosed with innate muscular deficiency at birth. Pain and suffering followed her as though they were her shadows, and immobility had always been something she had to cope with. Making use of his connections as the most influential person in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, he had invited the most formidable of physicians from all locations, but all of them were helpless before her affliction. He thought that it would be yet another disappointment. Never in his dreams did he expect that she would really be cured of her affliction this time around. More importantly, shouldn't recovery be a slow process? Shouldn't one start from moving their fingers before walking around? How in the world was she able to leap off the bed right after the treatment was completed, and not to mention, smash through rock with her fist? This was way too exaggerated. Lien, are you've recovered? Unable to believe his eyes, the Alliance head asked. Father, I have recovered fully. Furthermore, I feel boundless strength surging through my body. The lady chuckled as she stomped on the ground. Who? A rock tile flew up, and the lady struck the tile with her palm. Pun! Fragments flew around the room. The crowd. For an innate muscular deficiency patient to abruptly become a powerful person with overwhelming muscle strength with just a short treatment. Even if the treatment method was effective, wasn't this was way too effective? Guild Leader Meng, may I know from which kingdom did the person who presented the treatment method come from? I would like to thank him personally. Seeing her daughter walking around healthily as though an ordinary person, the middle-aged man was so excited that his eyes were gleaming. Yes. He came from a remote Tier 1 kingdom near Xianyuan Conferred Kingdom. Guild leader Meng pondered for a moment before replying. Father, there's no need for you to do so. Since I have recovered, I would like to go out and walk around. I will meet and thank the person who saved me personally. The lady chuckled. All right then. The middle-aged man nodded his head. Naturally, Jiang Xian was oblivious to the matters occurring at the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. At this moment, he had already altered his features to take on the appearance of Yang Xian, and he was currently on his way to the Master Teacher Pavilion. After taking a few steps, he suddenly stopped. Wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to meet Jiang Shu like that? Yang Xian, who he was impersonating was supposed to be a master teacher ranked above 3-star. Given his standing, if he were to travel all the way to the Master Teacher Pavilion to look for Jiang Shu, he might incur the other party's suspicion instead. He was confident in fooling others, but having taken the Master Teacher examination, he understood how fearsome the eyes of Master Teachers could be. The slightest carelessness might possibly cast doubt upon his identity, or even give him away. I should look for Lu Ling and the others and have them bring Jiang Shu over to me. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Xian decided on another course of action. It was perfectly normal for a master teacher of Yang Xian's level to summon his student if he wanted to meet him. It would hurt his prestige instead if he were to head there personally to look for the other party. As Jiang Shu's students, Zhao Ye and the others were considered as celebrities in the capital. As such, it wasn't too easy for him to find their residence. Looks like that fellow Bai Chan at least knows how he should act. Upon seeing the residence, Jiang Xian chuckled. He immediately knew that his threat was effective. Otherwise, it would surely be impossible for Lu Ling, Zhao Ye, and the others to find such a huge residence in the vicinity of the Master Teacher Pavilion. After ascertaining the location, Jiang Xian walked over. Soon, he was already standing at the entrance. Old Master, you're back. Just as Jiang Xian was thinking about how he should explain his identity to the guards to enter, Sun Chang suddenly appeared and welcomed him. The latter was so agitated that the fats on his face were bouncing around vigorously. On! Sun Chang had appeared at a timely moment, saving Jiang Xian of the hassle. Nodding his head, he walked into the residence. Old Master, I heard from the young master that you're coming as well. I thought that it will take a while longer before you arrive here. Sun Chang spoke agitatedly as the duo walked along the corridor of the residence. Bai Chan's ability to accomplish tasks was indeed splendid. This residence was several times larger than the one Jiang Xian rented at Tianxian Kingdom. Teacher. Soon, he arrived at the main hall. After receiving news of Yang Xian's arrival, Lu Ling and the others also hurried over. At this moment, Bai Chan had an anxious look on his face. The person before him was the teacher of Pavilion Master Jiang and Zhang Shi. No matter how brazen he might be, he didn't dare to act out of place before him. On. Nodding his head, Jiang Xian surveyed the surroundings before frowning. Where are the students of Xian Lad? Bai Chan, Lu Ling, Lu Sun, and Huang Yu were all here. Why were all of his students missing instead? He was currently assuming the identity of Yang Xian, the teacher of their teacher. In other words, their grand teacher. How could they not greet their grand teacher? They were being too impertinent. Lu Ling and the others were just about to speak when flurried footsteps sounded beyond the hall. Lu Shi, bad news. Zhao Ye has been injured by someone. Please save her. After which, Xing Yang and the others walked in while supporting Zhao Ye. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.